Gago pare, what's up? Good morning. Hope you guys are doing good. But yeah, it's been a while. I haven't been streaming for like what 2 weeks. um, I don't know. A lot has happened in a span of like 2 weeks. But yeah. Also, yeah, I'm finally using my model, like my new model. It's still work in progress, but I managed to finish. Well, not really finish. It's like the rigging is still work in progress, even the base model. But so far, I managed to rig the what do you call this? The body, like full body. So I'm planning to add like a walking animation for my model, but like I need to do comms first. So yeah, like that. There's also like this thing going on. So yeah. And I wanted to add a toggle for the pants, but it's very sussy. Your new model looks so good. Thank you. Like, I actually like rushed my model, like rigging the body, because I wanted to have like a working body for my commission. Like once when I reopened, like I had to finish just the upper body at least, so I can record like a proper video for that. And along the way, like I managed to rig the legs at least. But yeah, it's like the minimal basic rigging is kind of done. There's like the steps or walking animation that I have to experiment on, and I still have like my coat. I still have to like draw the coat and rig it. I don't think it will be done this year. Probably next year around Feb or so. But I'm really happy that my model's like done-ish. I guess I'm just happy to have a working model. So yeah. Wait, also did I set this to this chatting? Like, I'm just gonna set my stream to just chatting because like I'm allowed to stream the work, but just not post it like anywhere because it's like secret-ish kind of thing. So I'm currently working on the remaining arm toggles, and after that I'll work on the V-bridger commissions. But I'll probably like do the V-bridger commissions tomorrow because we still have to go somewhere later because my cat like I haven't like announced this on Twitter, but a few hours after I opened my commissions, I was sleeping, and at 4 a.m. Our cat jumped somewhere. Like my partner heard a loud thud, and our cat got injured, and we had to like take care of her. I was like busy looking for vets that would that have like x-ray, and she got like a fractured bone. Yeah, so the timing, I swear, like. So yesterday, like, we went out of town to get her like x-ray, like for her limbs, but they don't do the surgery for that. We have to go to another place, like another city, to get it checked and possibly like get get it fixed ASAP, because right now she's like on a cast at the moment. So yeah, it was really hard to look for a vet because we currently, live in a rural place. I can't speak English, but yeah. Like right now, she's being chillin', and that's what matters. Because like, I can only imagine like the pain. I'm just wondering, like, how the fuck she, like, where the hell she jumped from? Because I was asleep during that time. It was like 4 a.m. So yeah. So I'll only be streaming like for a short while because we will have to take her to the vet later. Like we still have to call them and send them her x-ray results. And hope for the best. They can accept, or they, like, it's possible to get it fixed by them. Because I swear, like, it's gonna be a hassle if they can't fix it and just pass us on to another vet, and it's gonna be difficult, like the commute as well. So yeah, cats do be like that. They do. How bad the damage is? Yeah, like her left front leg, like there's like 2 bones for the front legs, so both of them are shattered. Well, not really completely shattered, but the top one? No, the top one. Yeah, there's like bone chips too, so we really need to get that checked later. So right now I'm trying to like stream and probably like watch some video to. Oh shit! Thank you for the hydrate. Welcome, welcome. Ow! My water bottle is like so big I can't even carry it with one hand. But yeah, thank you. I see people are awake. Like in my place, it's like 4:47 a.m. Hey, thank you again for the hydrate, but I'll probably like do that later. Like I just drank water like a few seconds ago. But thank you for the stretch. Welcome Ashton Gray. Well, how are you doing? That was a lot of the sunny. But yeah, hope you guys are doing good. I was like explaining earlier like what happened to my cat because I am right now I'm stressing out about it, but at the same time I don't want it to bother me too much because I know it's not gonna help. But yeah. Yeah, I'm just gonna look for some video to watch because usually when I work, I like to watch something, and I do like watching, I don't know, like scary videos or mystery kind of thing if you guys are into it. Gonna lurk along with you. Okay, thank you for lurking. I really appreciate it. Also do check out Blank Rate. They are also a fellow artist and rigger. Do check them out. There we go. World's worst babysitter. She saw the warning but went anyways. Okay, hospital has disturbing
In 2015,
secret.
a startling discovery was made inside of this off-limits area inside of a prominent South African hospital. Now, at the time, no one really understood what this discovery meant.
My
and so
Spotify
eventually,
for my
people
stream
just
deck
kind of
isn't
forgot about
working.
it and moved on. Until 2 years later, when another eerily similar discovery was made inside of another prominent South African hospital in one of their off-limits areas. I can't believe this story has not gotten more press because one, it's recent, and two, the implications of these discoveries are mind-boggling. But before we get into that story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So, if that's of interest to you, please put coyote urine in the like button's apple juice. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's story.
The volume. Also, do let me know if the audio is kind of whack. Also, I'm using a new mic. My partner got me an audio interface, so I'm
on October 4th,
trying it out.
2017, a 61-year-old father of 6
and
named Tatike Katsai arrived at a hospital in Stellenbosch, which is one of the richest towns in South Africa. Tatike, who lived in the area with his family, had been dealing with some stomach issues over the last several months, and so this day he was finally going in to have abdominal surgery to hopefully alleviate those issues. So, after entering the building, Tatike was checked in, and then before long he was transferred to the operating room where surgeons got to work on him. After the surgery was over, Tatike was transferred to a recovery room in the hospital where he was scheduled to stay for at least a couple of days so the doctors and nurses could watch over him while he recovered and make sure there was no complications from the procedure. And so, on the afternoon of October 4th, Tatike just kind of lounged around inside of his recovery room. He couldn't really do anything because of the incisions on his stomach, and so he mostly just laid in his bed, he watched TV, he relaxed, he ate, and then at some point, some of his family members came into the hospital and they visited with him as well. By the end of that day, the day of his surgery, Tatike was definitely sore from the incisions, but overall, he was in good spirits, and to the medical staff, it seemed very likely that his surgery was a success. Early the next morning, at around 5:15 a.m., one of the nurses in the hospital went to Tatike's room to check on him. And when she went inside, Tatike was awake, he was alert, he seemed totally normal. And so after a brief conversation, the nurse told Tatike that she was just going to get him some fresh linens to make up his bed. And so Tatike nodded a thank you to her, and then the nurse, she turned away from Tatike, who's in his bed. She stepped out of the one door in the room into the hallway. She grabbed fresh linens off of a cart, and then she turned back around and went back into Tatike's room, except now Tatike was not in his bed. So the nurse immediately thought, okay, well then Tatike must have gone into his bathroom because the door was shut. He must be in the bathroom. And so just kind of reflexively, the nurse walked over to Tatike's now empty bed and replaced the linens. And then when she was done, she just looked at the bathroom door inside of his room, expecting Tatike to come outside any minute. But after a couple of minutes passed and Tatike had still not come out of the bathroom, the nurse decided to go over and just knock. And so she went over, she knocked on the bathroom door and just kind of called out, hey, is everything okay in there? But there was no answer. And so the nurse eventually just tried the handle, and when she saw it was open, she called out that she was coming inside. She opened up the bathroom door, and it was empty. And so the nurse, she whipped her head around and looked back out at the room where Tatike should have been, and she saw, you know, he's not on the bed, he's not under the bed, he's not anywhere in this room. Where could he have possibly gone? And she's thinking to herself, the only door out of this room is into the hallway, the same door that she had used to go out and get the linens. And if somehow Tatike had ran out of that door in the few seconds that her back was turned from Tatike, she certainly would have heard him or seen him. Because again, she was right outside the door and only outside of his room for a couple of seconds. Not to mention the fact, Tatike has major incisions on his stomach and could barely stand, let alone walk or run. And so totally baffled, this nurse ultimately left the room and went and told her superiors. Thank you to BetterHelp for sponsoring today's video. In 2017, I left the military, and pretty much right away, I fell apart. The military had provided a lot of structure in my life, and so suddenly not having that structure made me feel like I was lost. Pretty soon, I began resenting all the people around me just because they seemed happy and I wasn't. I sort of figured that these feelings of resentment and unhappiness would just kind of go away on their own, but they didn't. Eventually, with some encouragement from my family and my friends, I sought out a therapist. And quickly, my therapist diagnosed me with depression, something I really did not think I was. But after the shock of the diagnosis had worn off, me and my therapist were able to kind of go back in my life and figure out what was causing me to feel the way I was feeling. And before long, having that perspective really made me feel a lot better. Look, therapy is not for everyone, but it is a great starting point for people who just kind of feel lost and don't really know where to go. And so if that's you, I would highly suggest you give BetterHelp a try. BetterHelp is the world's largest therapy service, and it's 100% online. Get matched with a therapist after filling out a brief survey, and then you can communicate with your therapist however you feel comfortable, whether that's text messaging, phone call, video call, chat, whatever you want. You can also switch therapists at any time for free. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/Mr. Ballin. I've also linked them in the description below. This hospital would immediately begin looking for Tatike on the grounds of the hospital, but they would do it kind of quietly. They wouldn't call Tatike's family to tell them that, hey, we can't find him, nor would they call police. And some have speculated that either one, the hospital did not think this was an emergency and they would quickly find Tatike and that everything would be fine, or two, the hospital was just so embarrassed at the idea that they lost a patient, they didn't want anyone to know, and so that's why they didn't tell anyone. Regardless, the hospital would search for Tatike all day on the 5th, the day he went missing, and they wouldn't find him. And then the next day, the 6th, the hospital again would spend the entire day quietly searching everywhere in the hospital, but they wouldn't find him again. And so finally on the next day, the 7th, so 48 hours after Tatike had just kind of vanished inside of his room, the hospital would reach out to Tatike's family and they would say to them, hey, is Tatike home with you guys? And the family was like, no, he's supposed to be with you. And so the hospital would say, well, you know, he left 2 days ago, so we don't know where he is. And so Tatike's family is horrified, not only that they were totally left in the dark, but they would find out over the course of this conversation that the hospital had not even contacted the police yet. And so the family, they reached out to the police, and then later that day, the family would meet the police at the Stellenbosch hospital, and then a very public search of the property would ensue to look for Tatike. However, again, no one could find him. Authorities would continue to search both the hospital and also the neighboring area outside of the hospital over the next couple of days, but after they continued to find absolutely nothing, the search began to wind down, and so Tatike's devastated family was left with absolutely no idea what to think or what to do. Fast forward to October 20th, so 15 days after Tatike had gone missing. And on this day, the 20th, there was a construction crew at this hospital in Stellenbosch doing some renovations. And at some point on this day, one of the workers had to climb into the ceiling of one of the floors of this hospital. Now, the space above the ceiling is this tight, cramped space, almost like an attic. It's very big and wide. It's like the whole length of that floor. And really the only people that would ever go into the ceiling are construction workers or other authorized personnel that needed to do work. It's not a place that the public would ever go into. But when one of these workers went up into the ceiling, he had a headlamp on and he's kind of looking around, he's looking for what he needs to do up there, and at some point he turns his head and his light illuminates a person sitting in the corner far away from him, way up against the side in this tiny little attic space. And it would turn out it was Tatike, and he was deceased. The hospital had absolutely no clue how Tatike could have gotten up there. Not only is it obviously not a publicly accessible area, but the actual way to get up into the ceiling, the door that leads up into the ceiling, is very difficult to find. And even if Tatike found this entrance into the ceiling, it would have been nearly impossible for him to actually get into the ceiling. Because again, this guy has serious incisions on his stomach from the surgery he got. He could could barely sit up, he couldn't really walk, so the idea of him climbing and pulling himself up into the ceiling just seems impossible. Then there was the very strange autopsy results. Now, the full report has not been made public, but Tatike's family had a consultation with the hospital after the autopsy was complete, and they would go to reporters and talk about what the hospital told them. And apparently, the hospital told the family that Tatike did not die from complications from his surgery, and they heavily insinuated that Tatike did not die from natural causes. Something happened to him, and the hospital had no idea what this something was, and that's what killed him. And the hospital also told the family that Tatike likely was dead before he went up into the ceiling. Meaning someone or something killed Tatike, and then someone or something placed him in the ceiling. Again, this is just from the family going to reporters and talking about their discussion with the hospital. The hospital's only official statement has basically been that they have cooperated with the family and they don't really know what happened to Tatike. Now, of course, this is a very strange story, but it gets even weirder. On May 10th, 2019,
wow, bless
so about
you.
a year and a half after Tatike was found deceased in the Stellenbosch hospital ceiling, a 53-year-old father of 4 named Sandile Sabia arrived at another hospital in South Africa. It was in a city called Durban, which is considered to be one of the nicest and wealthiest places in South Africa, similar to Stellenbosch. Sandile was a builder, and he had been working on a house when he had fallen and broken his leg. Specifically, he broke his femur bone, the bone that runs from your hip down to your knee, the big single bone in your thigh. So just for reference, if you break your femur, you can't walk. So, with some assistance from friends and family, Sandile hobbled his way into this hospital in Durban, and he began to receive care. 2 days later, on May 17th, Sandile was still in the hospital, still recovering from this broken femur, when his cousin came to visit him. The cousin said Sandile seemed totally normal, and that during this visit, Sandile told the cousin that after the cousin left, Sandile was going to be transported from this hospital to another hospital nearby, where he was going to get an x-ray of his leg, as well as talk to another orthopedic surgeon. But apparently, after this cousin left from this visit, the doctors at the Durban hospital walked into Sandile's room to take him and transport him to this other hospital, and Sandile was not in his room. Now, this hospital in Durban was known for their very tight security, and so right away, their reaction was very different than the Stellenbosch hospital's reaction. This hospital immediately contacted authorities and said, "We are missing a patient," and they began a very public search of their hospital for Sandile. But they couldn't find him. On May 18th, so 6 days after Sandile disappeared, the hospital in Durban began to smell this horrible stench coming from one wing of their hospital. And so hospital workers would track the stench to a janitor's closet, and when they opened it up, they saw this black liquid dripping out of the ceiling, and the liquid was coming from Sandile's decomposing body that was located in the ceiling. Sandile's autopsy would be carried out very quickly. However, the results of that autopsy have never been made public, and Sandile's family has not commented on the results of this autopsy. As of today, all we know is that within a 2-year period, 2 seemingly ordinary South African men, who both could either not walk at all or who could barely walk because of their physical injuries, somehow snuck out of their hospital rooms totally undetected by staff and then wound up dead in the hospital ceiling. Some say the men really did somehow sneak out of their own accord and decided to go into the ceiling, and that's what happened. Others say both men were murdered and then placed into the ceiling, and still others think these 2 cases are the best examples of something called spontaneous teleportation, which is the hypothetical phenomenon where a human suddenly disappears and then almost instantaneously reappears in another location. But for now, there is no official explanation, so those are all
Hi,
just
Aspro,
theories.
thank you for the
And so it's up
lyric.
to you to
Really
decide
appreciate
what you
it.
believe. So that's going to do it. If you got something out of today's story and you haven't done this already, please put coyote urine in the like button's apple juice. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. We have a podcast called the Mr. Ballin Podcast that puts out brand new podcast exclusive stories on Monday mornings, and on Thursday mornings, we upload remastered audio of our best YouTube videos. Again, it's called the Mr. Ballin Podcast, and it is available exclusively on Amazon Music. Consider donating to our charity called the Mr. Ballin Foundation. It provides support to victims of violent crime as well as their families. Monthly donors to the Mr. Ballin Foundation Honor Them Society will receive free gifts and exclusive invites to special live events. Go to mrballin.foundation and click on Get Involved to join the Honor Them Society. Today's story is about a typical middle-class American family that had everything going for them. Mom and dad were still totally in love 25 years after getting married. Their 2 kids were happy, successful, and poised to do huge things in life. But then, in 2021, it was like things just started to go so badly for this family. It was like they had hit the stretch of unfathomably bad luck. But their misfortunes had nothing to do with bad luck. Their misfortunes were the result of someone in their midst carrying around a very big secret. But before we get into today's story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place, because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So, if that's of interest to you, the next time the like button is in a deep sleep, put a wig on them, also a beard and mustache combo, and then disguise their room to look like a hospital suite, and then violently shake them awake and tell them they've just woken up after being in a medically induced coma for years. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's story.
Okay.
In the early 1990s, a woman in her early 20s named Krista Frater was working as a manager inside of a retail store called the Boston Store in Madison, Wisconsin. Not long after she was hired there, the Boston Store would hire another employee to work at their Madison location. His name was Bart Halderson, and like Krista, he was in his early 20s, although he was 3 years younger than Krista, and he was hired to be a clerk. Bart and Krista didn't know each other before working at the same location, but their shifts often overlapped, and so in time they got to know each other, and they found they had a lot in common. They both had grown up roughly outside of Madison, Wisconsin. They both had graduated from the same college, the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and they both shared a love of home design. Krista, who had majored in art history in college, was very passionate about interior home design. As for Bart, he was just one of those people who naturally could fix just about anything with his bare hands, and growing up, his favorite projects were anything to do with home repairs. Whether it was something super simple or super complex, he didn't care. He just found it incredibly satisfying to keep a home in immaculate condition. And so Bart and Krista bonded over their commonalities, and in time, their working friendship evolved into a full-fledged romance. And by 1994, they had left the Boston Store, they had gotten married, and they had moved in together to their own apartment in DeForest, Wisconsin, which is not far from Madison. 2 years after that, in 1996, Bart and Krista welcomed their first child into the world. It was a little boy who they named Mitchell. And as soon as Mitchell was born, Krista decided she wanted to stay home with the baby, and Bart was in full support, and so he went out and he got a great job as an accountant, which paid enough money to pay for the whole family. And 18 months after Mitchell was born, Bart and Krista welcomed their second and final child, another boy who they named Chandler. A few years after Chandler was born, Bart and Krista had saved up just enough money that they could finally afford to buy a house of their own. And the house they finally settled on was just this very modest, small, 2-story home in this very quiet little town in Wisconsin called Windsor. Windsor is not far from DeForest, where they had been renting an apartment. But this little house in Windsor was perfect for Bart, Krista, and their boys. Not only did it have enough space for the family, But because it was their own house, as soon as they moved in, Krista got to really lean in to her passion for interior design, and she got to design the entire layout of the house. And then she continued to take pride in keeping the house perfectly tidy and beautiful at all times. As for Bart, he immediately began doing home repair project after home repair project. This house became his trophy, and he wanted to make sure his trophy was polished at all times. And it wasn't just the physical house that made this feel like their forever home. It was also their neighbors. As soon as they moved in, Bart and Krista made friends with all of the people that lived on their street, and they were all so friendly and welcoming. And then before long, the Haldersons were deeply invested in community activities like the Boy Scouts and the Kiwanis Club, and they were donating their time and money to other charities. I mean, so quickly, the Halderson family just found where they belonged. And over the next 2+ decades, life for the Haldersons in this little home in Windsor remained perfect. Bart continued to move up the ladder at his accounting firm, and Krista continued to be a devoted mother and housekeeper. As for the kids, Mitchell and Chandler, they were given every opportunity their parents could possibly give them, and in that loving and supportive environment, they both thrived. By 2021, the older brother, Mitchell, who was 25 at the time, he had moved out and was living alone in an apartment, and he had graduated from college. He had landed an incredible IT job with a local, very successful company. He was engaged to be married, and he was about to buy his own house. As for the younger brother, Chandler, who was 23 at the time, he was still living at home with Bart and Krista, but he was doing just as well as his older brother. He was in his final year of college, but he had already accepted a full-time job with SpaceX that was set to start in Florida as soon as he graduated. And while he was in his final year of college, in between his studies, he worked part-time at a local insurance company to help pay rent to his parents, and he also volunteered the rest of his spare time with the Madison Police Department on their rescue scuba diving team. Chandler was also in a committed relationship with his girlfriend. But despite how well everything was going for Bart, for Krista, for Mitchell, for Chandler, their lives were about to take a serious turn for the worst. It all started in June of 2021. That month, Chandler, who was only weeks away from flying out to Titusville, Florida to start his job with SpaceX, fell down an entire flight of stairs, smashing his head in the process. Now, he immediately picked himself up and tried to tell himself that he was okay, but over the course of that day, he started to feel woozy and disoriented, and his legs started to feel numb. And so in a panic, he rushed himself to the hospital, and unfortunately, when they scanned his brain and they checked him out, the doctors discovered he had a severe concussion from this fall, and he had a brain bleed that almost certainly would require surgery at some point down the road. Also, the numbness in his legs appeared to be the result of permanent nerve damage. And so suddenly, Chandler, who was so excited about this opportunity in Florida, is now back home in a neck brace with a cane to get around. And even with the cane, he can barely walk. And then adding insult to injury, he almost immediately lost the job at SpaceX because he couldn't travel to Florida to start the job, and so they filled it with someone else. Chandler did his best to stay positive and optimistic, but I mean, this was a crushing blow. Everything he had worked for had just been taken away. And it was crushing for his family too. I mean, seeing their beloved Chaz, as they called him, laying on the couch looking totally miserable and depressed all day was awful. But despite how bad Chandler's accident was, the trauma it inflicted on Chandler and his family was nothing compared to what happened next. The Haldersons owned a small cabin that was located in a part of Wisconsin called White Lake. It was located about 3 hours drive to the north of their home in Windsor, and the cabin was situated inside of this rural forested area right near a big lake called White Lake, hence the name of the area.
Good morning.
This cabin had been in the Halderson family since the 1940s, and when Mitchell and Chandler were little kids, Bart and Krista would take them up there all the time to go fishing, to go swimming, or just to relax. It was like their vacation home. But at some point, Chandler and Mitchell reached a certain age where they weren't that interested in going to the cabin anymore.
Yeah,
and so as a result, Bart and Krista basically stopped going.
Are we doing
However,
well?
just 2 weeks after Chandler's horrific injury, there was this huge storm that rolled through the White Lake area, and after the storm had passed, some people who lived permanently in White Lake called Bart and Krista and told them, hey, I was driving past your cabin and I saw there was some broken windows. It looks like your cabin might have been damaged from this storm. And so Bart and Krista, they're thinking, oh my goodness, we got to get up there as soon as we can and patch up that window and fix the rest of the cabin before another storm rolls through and totally ruins the cabin. And so Bart and Krista pull out their calendar and they see the next weekend coming up is the 4th of July weekend. The 4th of July is a very big holiday in America. It's when we celebrate our independence. And the way White Lake celebrates the 4th of July is with a big parade down Main Street and these amazing fireworks out over White Lake. And so Bart and Krista, they figure, you know what, let's just hold off and head up to our cabin in a couple of days to time it with the 4th of July weekend, and we can make the necessary repairs and we can enjoy the festivities of the holiday and kind of have a mini vacation up there. And so that was all fine and good. But right before they left for this trip up to White Lake, Bart and Krista started acting a little weird. On the evening of Thursday, July 1st, the day before Bart and Krista are supposed to leave for this trip, they begin packing up their things. And since Chandler lives with them, he's at home, he sees them doing this, and at some point he kind of got up and hobbled over and tried to help them pack, but that was short-lived because his legs were so weak. And so he sat down and just kind of watched them pack. And what he saw is they were packing lots and lots of cash and silver bars into their luggage. Although this was kind of odd to Chandler, he decided not to say anything because he figured, you know what, maybe they want to stash their cash and silver in the cabin like a keepsake. I don't know, but it's their business, it's not mine. And so Bart and Krista, they continue to pack up their things, and Chandler...
Welcome, Raiders! Thank you for the raid. Really appreciate it. Misa Bunny, thank you. And yeah, hope you guys had a really nice stream earlier. And for the newcomers, I'm Salty Ragefin. I'm a live 2D illustrator and rigger as well. So yeah, I'm currently just chilling, and like I like to work and watch videos at the same time. So yeah, like it's like a pretty like low energy stream, as I'll be going somewhere like later, so it's gonna be like a really short stream. So yeah, also thank you for the redeem. Hope you guys like it. Yes. I guess it would be nice to like show you guys like my model's body. That kind of sounds wrong, but yeah. So it's still work in progress, but you know, there's progress at least. Yep. Have a sneak peek and Thai physics, I guess. Not a lot. I don't really want too much jiggly physics, but yeah. Oh. Nice. Yeah, hope you guys like enjoy my stream, like big chill stream. Like it's pretty much not a lot going on as I'm currently like focusing and watching,
because he can't go anywhere,
some
just
Mr. Ballin
continues
videos.
to kind of watch them pack. And at some point, Chandler asks his parents, so how are you getting up to White Lake? And his parents would say, oh, we're just getting a ride from our friends, another couple. They're driving us up. But they didn't tell him who the couple was. They basically just said, it's our friends. And so again, Chandler's sitting there thinking, okay, this whole thing is a little bit weird, but you know what? It's their business. I'm not going to ask about it. They obviously don't want to tell me. And so he just kind of let it go. And so at some point, Bart and Krista, they finish packing and they move all their luggage to the front of the house, right near the front door. And then a little while later, they and Chandler would retreat to their rooms and they would go to sleep. The next morning, July 2nd, Friday, Chandler got up early at about 6 a.m. And when he got up, he began slowly hobbling his way down the stairs, expecting to see his mom and dad having breakfast and, getting ready to leave, because they certainly wouldn't have left without telling him. But he gets downstairs and the house is dark and totally empty, and all of the bags that his parents had packed the night before and put near the front door, they were all gone. And so Chandler's thinking, did my parents get up at like 5 a.m. and leave without telling me? So he goes to the door and he looks out the window thinking, maybe they're out there waiting outside. But when he looked outside, his parents weren't out there. And sure enough, their cars were still in the driveway. And so Chandler was left to believe that, well, I guess my parents did get picked up by whoever these friends were, and they did not feel the need to come tell me they were leaving. Now, this did leave Chandler a little bit shaken up. He just kept thinking about the strangeness of what they were packing and the fact that he didn't know who they were going with, and now this sudden departure. But again, Chandler just told himself that his parents would be just fine. These are just kind of random anomalies, but they are not indicative of there being any issue here. And so Chandler found a way to just kind of push these concerns out of his mind, and he just went about his day. And so because his parents were now going to be gone for the weekend, he promptly called his girlfriend, Catherine, and asked her to come over and stay at his house with him for a couple of days. And so she comes over, and because Chandler can't really do anything because of his injury, they basically spent the weekend just kind of lounging around and eating nice food and watching Netflix. But by the end of the weekend, on Sunday morning, there was an undertone that both of them noticed that something was wrong. Chandler had told his girlfriend about the strangeness of his parents' quick departure to White Lake, but he had said to her, I'm sure it's fine, and she basically said the same thing, that of course your parents are fine. But by Sunday, Bart and Krista had still not called or texted or checked in with Chandler or Mitchell or anybody. They were just totally gone and silent. And whenever Chandler or Catherine tried calling Bart or Krista's cell phone, it didn't even ring. It just went straight to voicemail. But by late that day, Sunday, July 4th, when really concerns were starting to mount about what happened to Bart and Krista, Krista would text her son, Chandler. And what she basically said was, hey, we arrived in White Lake, it's packed here, the service is terrible, but we're going to stick around for the parade, and we'll be back either Monday night or Tuesday early. And so as soon as Chandler and Catherine saw this text message, it was like all their worries were completely gone, and they were just excited to see Bart and Krista when they came back the next day or the day after. But the next day, Monday, Bart and Krista did not come home. They didn't call anyone. They didn't text anyone. And again, whenever anybody tried calling their cell phones, which now was Chandler, Catherine, and also Mitchell, who had been looped in on what's going on with his parents, whenever they tried calling them, Bart and Krista's phone didn't ring. It just went straight to voicemail. And
oh my god, another raid.
On Tuesday, July 6th, so this was the day that Krista said they would be home by, they didn't come home. And again, no one could get in touch with them. And again, they did not contact
really not
anyone.
expecting
Additionally,
like 2 raids
on Tuesday,
in
Krista's office began calling
on this
Chandler
stream.
and Mitchell.
Okay. Thank you for the raid. Welcome, Mikado channel. What's up? For the newcomers, I'm Salty Rageman. I'm a live 2D illustrator and rigger as well. But yeah, I make VTuber babies for a living. So yeah, right now I am working on a model. It's kind of like secret-ish. Like I am allowed to stream it, but not post it or like, show it everywhere. But yeah, I'm just like working and watching Mr. Ballin videos as I work. And yeah, I hope you guys had a nice stream earlier. And don't forget to like drink water, eat something after stream. Hi Raguna, what's up? You guys are doing good. I don't know what happened to my keyboard. It's a different color now. I think I pressed something. Mispress. Thank you. Welcome. Art is so nice. I saw you hanging out with Aoi before. Haven't interacted with you much. Oh yeah, like I really like the first time I collab with Aoi, like it's really nice. Like the topic doesn't stop. Like it doesn't end. Like I really love the whole like podcasty feel when I collab with her, and I wish to collab with her again. It's really fun. Like just being chilling like art stream. Um Games not that much because I am pretty busy with commissions, but I am like down again to like do art collabs or just co-working collab. Gotta sleep though, it's like 5 a.m. Oh yeah, you gotta sleep, holy shit. I mean it's 5 a.m. here as well, but I am kind of a degen. So I actually woke up like what, 7 p.m? Oh no 11 p.m. Yeah, Aoi is my mom figure. I turned her into a dirty Valorant player. Oh my god, what did you do to Aoi? No. Not Aoi. Did you start working on it already? Like which one? Like if it's the model, I'm just currently working on arm toggles, which is like almost done. Just like a bit of arm toggles, but like the one I'm working on right now is for a different model. But my model, like the one I'm using right now, is kind of like done-ish, like the very basic rigging, but it's still work in progress. Like other things that I want to add for my model. So this is like, the whole face and body rigging is done. Oh. So yeah. Thai physics. There we go. I have yet to work on my model's code, but I need to prioritize like commissions first. Like my model can wait. Very nice physics. Thank you. Like I don't know, like my model is like my very own lab rat in a way, so I can like experiment on things I haven't done. Like even in physics wise, like there are some things I haven't known yet, and I have to like redo a lot of things. But yeah, I don't think my model would be done probably within, I don't know, it'll probably be done around mid 2023, I guess. I have no idea.
Asking if they knew where Krista was. Krista
like
had
it's something
recently
I
taken
don't
up
really
a
need
customer
to rush.
service job at an auto body shop, and apparently she was scheduled to work on that day, Tuesday the 6th, and she was scheduled to work on that previous Friday, which was the day Bart and Krista left for the
So
lake.
thank you for the follow,
Meaning
Papa
she had
Gilo.
left on this trip
Did
without
I
telling
pronounce that
anybody
right?
at work. And according to her boss, Krista was the type of person who, even if she was running a couple of minutes late, she would call ahead or text ahead and let people know. So for her to just completely not show up and tell no one was totally out of character. But before Chandler, Mitchell, and Catherine could process this information, Bart's employer began calling them, asking the same things. Hey, do you know where Bart is? He's supposed to be working right now, and we can't get in touch with him, and he didn't put in for time off. And so all afternoon on Tuesday the 6th, Chandler, Mitchell, and Catherine and other family members are trying to call Bart and Krista. They're calling other people in White Lake to see if anybody knows where they are, but nobody does. And so finally, the next morning on Wednesday Thursday, July 7th, when still there was no word from Bart and Krista, Chandler goes to the police and he files a missing person report. And pretty much right away, the police in Windsor contacted the police up north in White Lake and asked them to do a check on this cabin to see if maybe Bart and Krista were there, and maybe they just had terrible service, or maybe there was some sort of accident or something that happened. But when the White Lake police arrived at the Halderson cabin, Bart and Krista were not there. No one was there. In fact, the cabin looked like it had not been used in months. The outside was totally overgrown, and inside there was no food in the fridge. And interestingly, the police would also tell Chandler, Mitchell, and Catherine that there was no damage done to this cabin. There were no broken windows or any sign, at least no obvious sign, of storm damage to this cabin. And so after this revelation, of course, Bart and Krista's family is like, wait a minute, who called them and told them to head up there to fix these obvious broken windows? Are those the same mystery friends that drove them up in the first place? I mean, what's going on here? Was this some sort of trap? Have they been set up? Are they okay? And so by the following day, Thursday, July 8th, when still there was no sign of Bart or Krista and the police really didn't have any new leads to speak of, Chandler was desperate. And so he went to local media and he said, please run a story about my parents and get the word out there that they're missing, and maybe someone knows something and they'll come forward. And so local media, they would do that. They would run this piece. And so while this media coverage is going on the 8th, Chandler would go back to his home and he would hobble door to door asking each of his neighbors if they had a security camera on the front of their house that might have picked up an angle of the street and so may have seen his parents on the morning of July 2nd when they climbed into that mystery couple's car that took them up to White Lake. Chandler was hoping that if he got this footage, somebody would be able to identify who these mystery friends were. But unfortunately, none of his neighbors had that footage. But as it would turn out, it didn't matter, because on that day, the 8th, the police made a discovery that at first seemed relatively minor, relatively small, but when they examined it more closely, they realized it was a huge discovery and it completely broke the case wide open. To understand this breakthrough, we have to go back to June 29th, 2021. So 3 days before Bart and Krista hopped into that mystery person's car and headed up to White Lake. On that day, June 29th, Bart had finally just had it. There had been something bothering him for a really long time, and he had just finally decided, you know what? Today, I'm going to get to the bottom of it. And so Bart pulled out his phone, he punched in a number, he put it to his ear, and after a few rings, a young man named Omar Job answered his call. In total, Bart and Omar would talk on the phone for a total of 17 minutes. And for the first half of the call, it was basically just Bart being really angry and aggressive towards Omar. But then during the second half of the call, when Omar really had a chance to speak for the first time, Bart's tone completely changed. He was no longer angry. He actually sounded totally defeated. And so after this 17-minute phone call finally comes to an end, Bart is left kind of in shock, but he knows he now needs to set up an even more intense meeting with a group of people, and he needs to tell them what he just learned from Omar. And within 24 hours, Bart had set this additional high-stakes meeting with this other group. It was set for 3 p.m. on July 1st. July 1st was the day before Bart and Krista would leave for White Lake. And so on July 1st, the day of this new pivotal meeting, Bart was working from home, and at some point he looked at his watch and he saw it was just after 2 p.m. And even though this meeting he was going to have was still an hour away, the location of the meeting was a bit of a drive away, and so he knew he needed to leave soon. And so Bart stopped working and he texted Chandler, who was in the house with him. He just said, ready to leave when you are. Chandler was aware of how important this meeting was for his dad. He also understood the terrible position his dad was in, and so he had agreed to go with his dad to this meeting. And so after a couple of minutes, both Chandler and Bart have gotten dressed and ready for this meeting, and they met downstairs on the first floor, and after kind of a nod to each other, they begin walking towards the front door. But then something happens. Chandler was standing behind Bart, And so as they're moving towards the door, Chandler reaches out and grabs a rifle he was hiding on the first floor. He raises it and he fires at least 2 shots into his father's back. And then once his father fell to the ground and was either dead or dying, Chandler, calm as can be, pulled out his phone and he texted his mother and told her, hey, Dad's phone is dead, so just text me. And then Chandler also sent his mother a text saying, get soda on your way home. To which his mother just wrote, "K, I can," smiley face. All Chandler was trying to do was buy as much time as possible to prep the house for his mother's return.
Okay,
and so over the next couple of hours, we don't know exactly what Chandler did, but it's assumed he moved his father's body into some hiding place, and then after maybe trying to clean up a little bit, Chandler laid in wait for his mother. And at 4:58 p.m., Krista would clock out of her job at the automotive shop. She would make a pit stop at a store to buy Chandler some soda, and then between 5:15 and 5:30, security cameras on neighbors' houses would pick her up pulling into her driveway. And then just a couple of minutes later, she walked inside of her beautiful little dream home where she had raised her family over the past couple of decades, only to be immediately gunned down by her son the second she walked inside. It would turn out Chandler was living a double life. He had never graduated from college. He had gone to college, but for like a semester and flunked out. But he just kept telling his friends and family that he was progressing through college and then he graduated from college, all made up. He also did not have a job at the insurance company. He just told his family that he worked from home, which really meant he sat in his room and played video games all day. He was not a rescue scuba diver for the Madison Police Department because 1, he was not a scuba diver, and 2, because the Madison Police Department did not have a rescue scuba diving team. And needless to say, he did not have a job with SpaceX. He had never even applied. As for his head injury, he may have bumped his head at some point, and he did go to the doctors by himself sometime in mid-June. But that doctor just told him he might have a mild concussion and then offered him a neck brace and told him, you don't need to wear it. That's only if you want to wear it. But then very quickly, Chandler turned this non-injury into a debilitating, crippling, life-altering injury and literally hobbled all around with a neck brace and cane. And the reason he did that is he needed an excuse for why he wasn't starting his job at SpaceX. In short, Chandler lied about virtually every aspect of his life to virtually everyone in his life. And for the most part, people did believe him. However, his parents were becoming more and more suspicious. Specifically, in 2021, he was telling them, oh yeah, I'm working at the insurance company, but he never had any money. He could barely pay rent to his family, if at all. And so his dad would say to him, how is it you are employed but have no money? And the way Chandler would handle this is he would create fake email accounts pretending to be people in HR at this insurance company, and then acting as them, he would write these convoluted emails that had these ridiculous excuses for why Chandler had not been paid yet. And so he would have that fake email account email his real account, and then Chandler in his actual email would write back really angrily and sternly saying, you gotta fix this, my family's not happy. And then he would once again pretend to be the HR person who would say, I'm sorry, it's some issue that you can't affect, we're gonna fix it, but you gotta wait. And Chandler would take these exchanges and he would forward them to his father. And while Bart didn't necessarily totally believe what he was being shown, it was enough to get him to stop asking questions. But Bart and Krista were also suspicious of other aspects of Chandler's life, like for example, his school records. At some point, he needed to show them his transcripts, and he would tell them, oh, you know, I can't access my transcripts. And so Bart and Krista are like, why? Can't you just log in and pull up your unofficial transcripts at least? And the way Chandler would handle this was the same way he handled the insurance company. He would create fictitious email accounts of people that were college advisors at Madison College, where he claimed to have gone and graduated from, and he would do those phony back and forths where it looked like the college was telling Chandler, sorry, you can't get your transcripts. It's this huge problem that's totally our fault, not yours, but you just gotta wait. There's nothing nothing else you can do. We can't get him for you right now. And when Chandler would send these exchanges to Bart, Bart would get totally worked up about it, and finally he demanded that Chandler give him a phone number so he can talk to one of these college advisors. And so Chandler went out and got a burner phone from a convenience store, and he gave that phone number to his dad, and then when his dad called this number up, somebody picked up, someone introducing themselves as Daniel Spieth, which really was just Chandler disguising his voice, and Daniel Spieth would give Bart the same spiel about how, oh, I'm so sorry, it's all the college's fault that we can't get your son's transcripts, you're just gonna have to wait. And so finally, on June 29th, 2021, Bart had just had it with his son.
Thank you for the
He was
follow.
convinced his son was lying, or there was something going on, there was just too much about his son's life that didn't add up. And so Bart decided he was just going to call Madison College and pretend to be Chandler and see if he could get his transcripts. And so he dialed a number for customer service at Madison College, and after a few rings, Omar Job, a customer service rep at Madison College, picked up, and initially Bart was kind of aggressive and mean towards Omar for really no reason other than he was just so frustrated with this whole situation, and so he's on this call pretending to be Chandler. He's kind of barking at Omar to give me my transcripts right now. I go to your school. There's no reason you can keep them from me. But then after a couple of minutes, Omar finally was able to talk.
Yeah,
he said, hey, Chandler, I looked you up in the system, and you don't go to this school. You've never gone to this school, save for maybe one semester, and you failed out. And so it's at this point when Bart hears this,
also
that
shout
he just
out
pauses for a really long amount of time on this call. And then he begins asking follow-up questions that are not really connected to trying to get transcripts, because now he knows the transcripts don't exist because his son didn't go to school. And so he begins asking Omar, does Daniel Spieth still work there? And so Omar would look him up and he would say, no, there's no Daniel Spieth that works here, and there's no Daniel Spieth that's ever worked here. And because Chandler had used like 5 or 6 different names when pretending to be college advisors for Madison College, Bart, in addition to asking about that Daniel Spieth guy, asked about every other name he had interacted with, believing he was talking to Madison College, and one by one,
I've been
Omar
gone for like 2
him,
weeks
sorry,
because there was a lot that happened.
I've never heard of these people. They're not in the directory. I'm sorry. And so finally, at the
been
end
hard
of
to
that
like
17-minute call, Bart knew his son was living a huge lie. And so he hung up with Omar,
because
and
I was
then
like
Bart called
working on
real
commissions.
college advisors at
So
Madison
trying to find
College,
myself in streaming
and he set a meeting for July 1st at 3 p.m. And then he
it's kind of
told
like the
Chandler
same-ish
that he
for
had
me,
set this meeting, and Chandler was going to come with him, and
I shall
they
try again.
together were going to ask those college
please
advisors
do, like,
why they can't produce Chandler's
I don't know,
transcripts. Now Bart, of course, knew
like streaming
Chandler
is like
did
a
not
part
have
of
transcripts, and so he
that I
likely
need to
had
get
set
back
this
into.
meeting to get
Also
Chandler
stuff happens,
to
so
call the
I'm
meeting
kind of
off and come
like
clean
lost.
about this big lie.
Yeah,
so
I feel you on
Bart
that.
could get his son
Like that was
back on
me
the right
like
track. Stop lying
2 weeks
and live
ago.
a real
Not gonna
life.
lie.
But the way
Ever
Chandler
since, like,
handled being caught was not to
what
own up
happened.
to any of this. He didn't call off the meeting. He just waited until
But yeah,
the day
I'm not
of
sure
the
if you
meeting,
were
and then he killed
aware
his
of that,
father, killed his mother,
or if
and
they
then
told you.
dismembered their bodies and burned their body parts in the family fireplace.
I'm aware of it.
including their
I
heads.
see.
And then when he couldn't destroy their bodies completely, he took what was left of their remains and scattered them all over town in parks and forests and rivers. He even put his father's headless, armless, legless
had to
torso
step out because
behind his
I was
girlfriend's
like giving
parents'
advice
house. And all the while, as
based
he's
on
doing
information
this,
that was
he's
given to
spinning
me,
this ridiculous
and then one
story
crucial
to his
info
girlfriend,
was
to his brother, to other members of the
hidden
Halderson family,
from
to
us.
police, to
And
colleagues of Bart and Krista,
that
Bart and
broke my
Krista just
trust.
up and left on
So
the
I had
morning
to,
of
like,
July 2nd with this mystery
step out.
couple. And oh, by the way, my parents, they were putting cash and silver bars in their luggage. So I don't know. They went up to
And not
White
gonna lie,
Lake,
that
and now they're gone.
kind of, like,
I don't know what happened to them. We don't know
impacted
why
me
Chandler
really hard.
chose the
Like,
story
I couldn't
he
stream.
did. It's unclear
It was
if
also
he was trying to
hard
make it
to
seem like his
work on
parents
commissions.
were suspicious and had gotten into something
But
that had
yeah,
maybe gotten
now
them
I'm
harmed
trying
or
to, like,
kidnapped,
get back.
or if he was trying to make it seem like his parents were just super
And plus
gullible
it's Christmas
and had been
anyway,
taken
so
advantage of by this
I'm
mystery
trying
couple. We don't know.
not
He was
to
just
think
trying
about
to make
it
the
too
whole
much.
situation seem plausibly suspicious. Ultimately, though, Chandler did so many things that got him caught. from the mountain of physical evidence he left behind inside of his house, where he killed and dismembered his parents, and also at the various dump sites where he didn't even bury the body parts. He would just put them underneath sticks and branches, and so they were very easy to find. To his extremely suspicious behavior on July 7th, when he walked into the police station and reported his parents missing.
And at the same time, I now have more time to
so weird and was
work
just
on other
saying things that
things.
didn't make sense, and he just
Like
totally
I was
came
able
off
to
like a guy
prep
who
my
did not care at
commissions.
all that his
I was
parents
able
were
to
gone, and really just seemed like a
work on
guy who was
some
hiding
of
something.
the
But
remaining
the big
toggles
breakthrough
for
that happened on
one
July
of
8th
my
that
clients.
broke the case open stemmed from the text message Krista's phone sent to Chandler's phone on July 4th. When Chandler walked into the police station on July 7th and said, "My parents are missing," one of the first questions they had for him was, "Okay, well, when was the last time you spoke to your
And
parents?"
also, like,
Chandler
I
would tell
also
them he
tried
got a
reviving
text
my
message
FB
from his
page.
mother, Krista,
So it's kind of
on
like
Sunday, July
semi-alive
4th. And then he
ish.
showed them the text message. And the text message said that
Like,
they
I'm
had
trying to, like,
arrived in
post
White
every
Lake,
now and
they were
then.
going to be sticking around for the parade, and they'd be back in a couple of days. But the police noticed that this text message had been sent
And I'm
on
also trying
July
to
4th.
grow
But
my
in White
Discord
Lake that
server
year,
as well,
the parade
so
was on July 3rd.
it's not dead.
So when this text came through, the parade that anyone in White Lake would be aware of, it's a small place, you're not going to miss this parade. The parade had already happened. So why would Krista be texting her son that she was going to stick around in White Lake for the parade that had already happened? And so this led police to check phone records,
And hope for the
and they
best
would
that
discover that text
next
message
year would be
was sent from
better
Krista's phone
for
to
all of
Chandler's
us.
phone. But when it was sent on July 4th, Krista's phone was not in White Lake. Instead, it was inside of the Halderson home, right near Chandler's phone. And so when police went to the Halderson house, they searched it and they found Krista's phone in the garage underneath a drawer inside of a shoe wrapped in tinfoil next to her driver's license. And so Chandler had obviously sent that text message on July 4th using his mother's phone to himself. But he had just gotten the date wrong of the parade. And so this discrepancy really opened up the floodgates, and before long, it was beyond obvious that Chandler was the killer. And after a thorough investigation, it was determined that Chandler had acted entirely alone, meaning Catherine, his girlfriend, and his brother Mitchell had nothing to do with it. They were just innocent bystanders. Chandler would ultimately be found guilty of killing his parents, and he would be sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Chandler has still not taken any responsibility for what he's done. Instead, he just tells anybody who will listen that his plan is to continue to appeal his verdict.
Back up.
So that's going to do it. If you got something out of today's episode and you haven't done this already, the next time the like button is in a deep sleep, put a wig on them along with a mustache beard combo, and then decorate their bedroom to look like a hospital suite, and then violently shake them awake and tell them they've been in a medically induced coma for years. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications
Oh my god,
so you don't
another
miss any of our
raid.
weekly uploads. We now have a podcast called the Mr.
Oh my
Ball-
god. Oh my god, it's Bunny. Hey Bunny, thank you so much for the raid. How's stream? Hope you had a fun stream. And for the newcomers, I'm Salty Rage Fin. I'm a live 2D illustrator and rigger as well. I create VTuber babies, if that makes sense. I give birth to VTuber babies, yes. So right now I'm just chilling, like watching some Mr. Ballin videos, like creepy videos, I guess, while I'm working on like arm toggles, which is like almost done, and hopefully like tomorrow I'll be able to work on the V-Bridger commissions. Like there is like 2 applications that are really good. Like I love their design. Stream was good, thank you. How's your stream going? Like it's really like chill. Like I haven't streamed for 2 weeks, so I just got back today actually, and it's gonna be like a short stream. because me and my partner are we're gonna go to the vet like in another town because I didn't announce this on my Twitter like after opening my commissions, but like a few hours after I posted like my announcement about opening VBridger commissions, my cat like injured herself. She got a fracture, so we have to like take her to the vet later, like ASAP, and hope she gets like urgent surgery. Yeah, like I really couldn't afford to like break down, so like what matters most is she gets the treatment that she needs right away, especially now that it's so hard to look for vets in our area, plus it's like holidays, so but I'm just glad she's just chilling right now. She actually she has a cast right now, so that's good, and that's what matters instead of like her just lifting her leg like limping. But yeah, it's a relief at least. She gets the treatment. Yeah, I hope so too. But yeah, I'm just glad that there are some vets like they are far away, but there's no traffic because traffic sucks in like the what do you call this, like the capital, I guess. But since we live in a rural area, it's not that much of a problem. Your mouth movements are top notch. Sorry to break the emotional couple. It's okay. It's okay. But I just wanted to give like an update because I really haven't like announced it like after opening commissions, but I feel like it needs to be said. But so yeah. Manifesting no traffic. Yeah, like I'm highly confident that there's no traffic, at least because we don't live in the like more urban areas. Like you know, it's really way better to live in the province. Not gonna lie. Like yeah, it's far away, but I think everything is cheaper. So yeah, pray for her safety. Thank you guys. Like so yeah, now like I do have like a bit of time to stream before we take her to the vet, so at least my community knows like about what's up and give them like updates on what I've been up to as well. Oh yeah, like I think you guys haven't seen my model. Like before my model was just a head, like it was just a floating head like last month, and when I opened VBridger commissions, I've only rush rigged the upper body, and now I do have a bit of rigging for the lower body, like the legs and hips. So here's the outcome. I'm not sure if you guys can see it. So there we go. So that's like the whole rigging thing going on. There's also the lean, I think, and Thai physics. Booba? And I really love like what I did with the choker. Like I wanted to make it like realistic as much as possible in terms of like physics for the choker pendant. Like it's made of like steel, so that means it has like way faster physics. Something like that. Whoa, what? What the fuck? My money don't jiggle. So yeah, hope you guys like the preview or like, you know, slight update on my model. And hopefully in the next coming months of next year, I'll be able to like finish the code for my model as well as the like arm toggles. But I'm really in no rush for my model. That's how I want my model to be. But the hair is black and blue. With blue tips. Like we need more model that have like gradient hair. Like I've seen like a lot of models that have like just one tone of color and not a lot that has like ombre, if you call it that. Like different color from the top, different color from downwards. But the cons of having like I guess two-toned hair color or like multiple toned is pick crew. Like, you know, there are some like trending pick crews and it's hard to make your own pick crew of yourself because you have like different colors like on your hair. Yeah, I know, like it was so hard for me to like find like good pick crews that have like very editable like hair color. I've only seen one where you can edit like the top part, like the upper half part of the hair, like the color, and the bottom half. Like it's so hard to find. Like it's really frustrating sometimes. Like it makes me wish that I have like one tone of hair color. But I don't know, maybe I can make another hair version where it's really close to my hair in real life, like the one that's not dyed and bleached, I guess. Couldn't you create one? Like I would, like for pick crew, but at the same time it takes a while to like make one yourself, and I don't really have time for that since, you know, commissions and all that. But I've been considering that for a long time, like making my own pick crew. But I don't even know where to start. Plus, the website is like in a different language. So it's gonna be a struggle to like navigate the website. So yeah.
And podcast that puts out brand new stories on Monday mornings, and we put out remasters of our best YouTube audio. In 2021, police in Salt Lake City, Utah, discovered a strange video on someone's phone.
Because if you want it to be
which at first seems kind of
like really intuitive,
is one of the most disturbing
you need
and
to
distressing
add more
videos
parts,
when you
you need
realize
to
what
add
it's about. Fair
a
warning,
lot
we're
of like
going to play a
sections,
portion
you
of
need
that
to draw
video in today's episode
clothes,
towards the
like
end of the
different types
episode.
of clothes.
And also, fair warning,
And I'm like,
the ending to this story is just totally
that's a
heartbreaking
lot.
and brutal. So viewer discretion is advised. But
I was
before we
thinking
get
to come
into
back to
today's
the
story,
streaming scene,
if
but
you're
then
a fan
whether
of the
I wanted
strange,
to
dark,
try
and
as a
mysterious
VTuber
delivered in story
or
format,
return to being
then you come
myself.
to the right
I mean,
place because that's all we do, and we upload once or twice
if
every week. So
you're
if that's of interest to you,
undecisive,
please move
I
into the room directly
highly recommend
above
like
the like button
try
department
out doing
and
both.
immediately
Like
begin hosting tap
maybe
dancing
one
classes
stream you
in
can
your
try
apartment.
being
Also,
a
please subscribe
VTuber,
to our channel
and then
turn
another
on all
stream you can try out
notifications so you don't
just
miss
being
any of our
yourself.
weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into
So I'm not
today's
sure if
story.
you meant like showing your face, like having a face cam on, but yeah. But sometimes I try to like show my face like once in a blue moon on stream,
On January 28,
but
1976,
that requires me to
Daniel
like
Halseth
do
was
my
born
makeup
in a small town in Oregon called
because
Estacada,
I
which is
do
located about
want to
30
look
miles southeast
presentable
of
on
Portland.
stream at
Daniel's
least.
family owned a farm,
I don't want to
and
look
so
stuff.
from a young age, Daniel became accustomed to getting up super early and helping out with daily chores.
Yeah, it's in face
This
scan.
childhood experience on the farm instilled in Daniel a strong work ethic, and it also taught Daniel to
because
really
like both
appreciate
have
family,
their own
because
pros
the
and
family he
cons.
had grown
Like
up in spent all their time
being a
together,
face cam
and they all
streamer,
struggled and worked together
you don't
every day
have to worry
make ends
about
meet.
opening
In
a
high
lot of
school,
apps just
Daniel
to
really
run
began
your
to
VTuber.
blossom. He had
Like
this
for me,
wonderful energy
I'm
and
running
huge radiant smile
multiple
that drew people
programs
to him,
at the same time.
and
Like
he was just one of those people
I have
that
like
was just
VBurger,
naturally
I
gifted
have
at everything he did.
VTube
And it
Studio
seemed
on my
totally
PC
effortless.
running,
During his
and
high school
also the
years,
throwing
he picked
system,
up playing the
which is
piano
like
as well
this
as the
one.
drums, and his
Ow.
classmates affectionately nicknamed him Drummer Daniel.
And I also
Daniel
have
was also
like
amazing
my
with anything to
iPhone
do with
for
computers
face
or
tracking, so
technology. And
I have
Daniel
like
was just very
my
handsome
iPhone like
and very
open at
athletic
all
and fit.
times.
And so he was really the guy that everybody wanted
I need to
to
fix
be.
my OBS
But
first.
despite
Yeah,
having
that's
all
like
of these
the
things
very
going for
first
him,
thing.
Daniel was dealt a
And
major blow in 1994 when he was in his junior
like
year of
ever
high
since
school.
the update,
That year, his
like
father,
the
who
OBS
he was
update,
quite close
it
with, died
really messed up with my
unexpectedly
settings.
from a brain aneurysm. This was a crushing blow
But
for a young man that still
yeah,
very
for
much
face cam
leaned on
streams,
his
you don't
father
really need
for
to worry
guidance
about
and support.
a lot
But
of things.
Daniel,
You just
like
have
the rest of his
to,
family, found
I
a
don't know,
way
like
to just
fix
keep on
your
going
webcam's like
despite this
exposure,
immense
like
heartbreak. In
autofocus
1995,
or
so
something.
a year after his father's death, Daniel would graduate high school and he
and
would
like
head
do
to
some color
Salem,
correction,
Oregon,
and that's it.
where he would go to school
If you
and
want
earn
to
his
have like
bachelor's
green
degree in
screen,
music,
like just
and then he would
buy a
stick
green
around in
screen, I
Salem at
guess.
another university and he would earn his master's in business. And it was during those years that he was in
Hey,
Salem
welcome,
that Daniel would
welcome.
meet a young woman named Elizabeth Schwarak who had grown up in Salem. She, like Daniel, was incredibly hardworking and was just naturally good at everything she tried. She was also a model,
But
and
yeah.
so when she and Daniel
for
began
VTubing,
dating,
you could
they
start
genuinely
as,
looked
like,
this beautiful Hollywood
as a
couple.
PNG
In
tuber,
2001, which was shortly
because,
after Daniel had earned his master's
I don't know, some people
degree,
tend
he and
to
Elizabeth got married.
want to
5
start
years
big.
later, the couple, who
And
now were the
I
proud parents
really
of 3 young
highly
children, 2 girls and a
recommend
boy,
starting small
they moved
first.
to Las Vegas
Before,
because Daniel had found work there. Daniel had founded
before
this
you decide
computer
if
IT company
you want to
because he was
continue
so
as a
skilled with
VTuber.
computers, and it was really starting to thrive.
Because some
and
people
many of his
tend to, like,
clients were in or around Las Vegas.
they're like,
but just a few
they're just
years after
starting
getting
as
settled
a
in Las
streamer in
Vegas,
general,
it would
but
be Elizabeth's career
they wanted to
ambitions that
like
would take center
spend
stage
a
in
lot
the
of
family.
money for
Elizabeth had always wanted
their
to get
VTuber
into
model,
politics,
and
in 2010,
when they find out
she decided
that
she would run
it,
for a
like
state
VTubing
Senate
is not
seat
for
in
them,
Nevada.
it's
But in
a
order
waste
to
of
do
money.
that, she would need to campaign really aggressively, which would mean she'd be gone a lot of the time. And so Daniel, who was working full time with this computer company, he would need to keep doing that because that paid the bills. But he would
So yeah,
also have to
even for
become
me,
the
sometimes
primary
I
parent
use
for their
my
3 children. And so when she
3D
approached
model
Daniel and
or
said, I really want to do
PNG
this,
model.
but it requires a lot out of you. Are you willing to do this? Daniel was completely supportive and actually really excited at the idea. He had no problems whatsoever. And so very soon, Elizabeth would be out on the road campaigning and trying to win the state Senate seat, and Daniel would be home goofing around with the kids and taking them hiking and going to playgrounds and parks. And then after he would put the kids to bed at night, he would stay up super late and run his computer business out of their dining room.
Thanks for the advice.
And
I'm gonna
all
head
this
to bed
additional hard work and
as
sacrifice that
unwell.
Daniel was making for
That was
his
nice to meet
wife
you. Okay,
paid
okay.
off
Thank you for the
when
follow,
later
though. I
that
really
year, on
appreciate it.
November
Also,
2nd,
do
Elizabeth
get some
would run
rest.
this
I
incredible campaign that
really
was built
appreciate
on
you
family values and
hanging out even
wholesomeness
for a
and
short
morality.
while.
She
But
would
do
win
prioritize
the state
your
Senate
health
seat,
first.
which shocked the state
And
of
don't forget to
Nevada.
drink water,
And
okay?
even more impressive, she would become the youngest woman to ever be elected to Nevada legislature at just 27 years old. So it was clear to everyone in Nevada and also outside of Nevada that Elizabeth was destined for greatness. She was going to be the next big political superstar. And anyone who was close to the Halseth
Yeah, good
family
night.
knew Daniel was her number
do
1
rest
cheerleader.
well.
He was so proud of her. But soon, the Halseth's perfect life would come crumbling down. It was not long after Elizabeth had won her election that Daniel began to notice she was becoming suspiciously close with
shady.
another man named Tiger Helgelian, who was a former golf pro and fellow rising political star. After noticing his wife
I
constantly
was looking for
texting
legs,
with
and I
Tiger,
named the
Daniel would
older
actually reach out
feetsies.
to Tiger directly and beg him to stop messaging his wife and to just leave his family alone. But the texting and the calling and the interactions between those two would not stop. And then finally, in October of 2011, so less than a year into Elizabeth's first term as a state senator, Daniel would find out that his wife and Tiger had been away together alone on this long extended work trip. And so Daniel realized that almost certainly his wife was having an affair. And so when his wife came home from this trip and she was unpacking in their bedroom, Daniel walked into the room and he accused her of being unfaithful. And the argument that ensued got very heated, but it did not become physically violent. Basically, Daniel just screamed and yelled at Elizabeth, swearing at her and kind of losing his temper completely. But at some point, Elizabeth just said, "Daniel, stop." And Daniel would actually stop. And in fact, both Elizabeth and Daniel, when they were called this night, would say as soon as she said stop, Daniel stopped yelling and he left the room. Over the next couple of days, Daniel and Elizabeth would go to therapy sessions at their church, indicating that they both were making a concerted effort to try to salvage their marriage. But on October 21st, 5 days after this big blow-up fight about the affair, Elizabeth would go to police and she would claim Daniel had touched her inappropriately during the fight they had over the affair. And so Daniel, much to his shock, was arrested and charged with something called open and gross lewdness, which is effectively unwanted touching of another person. This accusation is quite common, especially amongst people at bars who are drinking. You know, there's lots of unwanted touching that can happen there. But interestingly, this particular charge is cited as being one of the more frequently falsely accused offenses because the police do not require any physical proof to actually arrest someone. Basically, people are, in theory, able to get other people arrested simply by claiming they inappropriately touched them, even if there is not a shred of proof. It's basically one person's word against the other. After being found guilty of open and gross lewdness, Daniel was sentenced to 6 months of probation, anger management, and he had to register as a sex offender. Shortly after he was found guilty, Daniel filed for divorce. Their divorce, which was heavily centered on who gets custody of their 3 kids, was very contentious. It was very bitter.
Not gonna lie,
very public. Because Elizabeth
I
was a
think
state
people
senator, she was
who
in
like
the
falsely
public
accuse
eye,
someone,
and because her
like especially
campaign
when
that
it
she
comes
had
to like
run on to get
really
elected was
serious
built
claims,
entirely on wholesomeness
they
and family values
need to be
and
in
having good
jail.
moral character. That when rumors started to fly that she had
Hi,
had this
Small,
affair with
what's
Tiger
up?
Helgalian,
I'm in
and that
Ilo
had
Ilo,
blown up a
hell yeah,
family,
let's
and
go.
her husband is being charged with open and gross
House
lewdness.
Ilo
It was
Ilo.
just so salacious that despite her denying that she ever had this affair and acting like she was in the right,
There
she was
needs
still
to be
forced to
consequences,
resign from her state senate seat in February of 2012. The divorce
There have
would
been like way too
finalize
many
later
people,
that year,
like innocent
and
people
most
that get
likely
killed
because of
because of
Daniel's
like
new
false
sex offender
accusations.
status from the open and gross lewdness charge, he was denied custody of the 3 children, despite the fact that for the last several years he had been the everyday
Hope you're doing good,
parent.
Small.
So Elizabeth, she gets custody of all 3
Dang
kids,
it,
and she promptly leaves Nevada to
came
go
in
to
15th
Alaska
place?
with her 3 kids to live with Tiger Helgalian, the man she denied having an affair
Yeah, and
with.
people use false claims
Shortly
as a
after
threat
arriving in
too,
Alaska,
which is
she
so bad.
married Tiger Helgalian. Daniel was
Yeah,
heartbroken. It was like
that,
his life
like,
had blown up.
Not gonna
in a
lie,
matter of
I've been in that
seconds.
position,
But most devastating
it
of
sucks
all
ass.
was that his kids, who he called his 3 little angels, were now so far away from him he couldn't even
like
see
I
them
was
if he
like falsely
wanted to. But
accused
just like he
of
had
something
done
I didn't
back in
do,
1994
and
when
I
his
was like
father
forced
passed away,
to
Daniel just found a way
show
to
receipts.
keep on going.
Like
despite this
everything's like
horrible
in my
pain he was
personal
feeling. Over the next few
like
years,
account,
Daniel would
so I
pour
can't really
himself
show it.
into his computer business and really make that his full-time
Dropping by
effort.
before I sleep.
And
Good
he would
night and
make
good
every
morning. Thank
effort
you
to see
for
his
dropping
children
by.
any chance he
Really
got.
appreciate it,
But
and I
because
hope
his
you had a good
relationship
night.
with his ex-wife
You
Elizabeth
have a
was
good
not
night.
good,
No,
it
I
was
can't
really
English.
difficult to see his kids. Eventually, Daniel would
Yeah, that
meet
must have
another
been so
woman
scary,
named
yeah.
Bogdana, and they would actually get married. And when that happened, it seemed like, in the eyes of Daniel's family, he was starting to kind of finally get his life back on track. Around this
Yeah,
time,
it
Daniel
really is.
began sharing more and more of his life,
especially
on
when
his
it comes
social
to like
media
people
channels.
who
And every
have like
post
nothing
he
to
made, and he made
lose.
lots of them nearly every day, were so overwhelmingly
Like they don't
positive
care
and
if
optimistic, and it really showcased
like
his wonderful
their
personality that was
image
all
gets,
about lifting up your
I don't
fellow
know,
person
like their
and just
reputation
being
gets
a
like
good human being. And he also posted loads of videos of him goofing around with his 3
turns to
kids
shit or
because he
something.
adored his kids. They were the most important thing
Mostly
to
just
him
vibing
by
in
far.
food here.
But despite
Ayo,
having
what
this
are you
very
eating?
cheerful outward presence on social media, privately, Daniel was dealt yet another very difficult blow in 2019 when his marriage to Bogdana, his second wife, fell apart. And so once
chimkin?
again, Daniel
Like
was
fried
all alone.
or
His social media posts around the
fried
time of
chimkin
the second
or
divorce remained positive and
like
very
other
optimistic
dish?
for the most part. But anytime you saw an image of Daniel actually facing the camera, you could just see a distinct sadness in his eyes. But just as quickly as it seemed like once again Daniel's life was just going to crumble, something truly amazing happened for Daniel. Daniel's first ex-wife, Elizabeth, and their 3 kids decided to leave Alaska and come back to Nevada and resettle in Las Vegas. This was not because Elizabeth wanted to rekindle with Daniel. It was just because she and the kids liked living in Las Vegas and wanted to come back. And as soon as they were back, Daniel suddenly got to see his kids all the time. He was so excited and so happy. In fact, by late 2020, Daniel's youngest daughter, Sierra, who was 16, she had basically just moved in with Daniel, even though legally speaking, she was not supposed to be doing that. And her mom, Elizabeth, was totally unhappy about it. But regardless, that was just how it was. She was living with Daniel. In August of that year, so around the time that Sierra had basically moved back in with Daniel, Daniel decided to take his ex-wife, Elizabeth, back to court to see if he could get custody of Sierra, because Sierra was the only minor of their 3 children. She was still 16, and at that point, Sierra was already living with him. During the recorded video sessions between Daniel, Elizabeth, and the judge, Daniel would tell the judge that life in Elizabeth's home was totally toxic and not good for his children, and certainly not good for Sierra. Daniel would explain to the judge that Sierra was really struggling with some mental health issues, and what she needed right now was professional therapy, something he had already enrolled her in since she had moved back in with him. Daniel also presented to the judge a letter that he said Sierra wrote that basically backed up the idea that she is better off living with her father. Elizabeth would generally respond to all of these things that Daniel was saying by saying Daniel was a liar and that he's not fit to be a parent,
in the morning.
And that letter that he claims Sierra wrote doesn't sound like her, insinuating that, you know, the letter was forged. The judge, who at regular intervals would get very frustrated with both Daniel and Elizabeth, finally would just say, "Look, you got all sorts of issues
like
between the 2 of you, and it's creating a horrible environment for your kids. And if you don't find a way to come to some sort of compromise,
sauces
the people
for
that are
adobo?
going to suffer are your kids."
Like, isn't adobo
Sierra.
already like
Finally,
saucy?
in early 2021, when Daniel and Elizabeth still had not come to terms, the judge just ordered that Daniel return Sierra to her mother's residence,
there are
because
some like
legally speaking,
other special
Sierra
sauces
was
that
supposed to be in
you
her
put
mother's
in
care.
adobo.
And so begrudgingly, Daniel would
Like
take
other than
Sierra and
adobo?
he would bring her back to her mother's
okay.
house, and he would say, "Okay, you know, go see your mother," and then he would drive off. But later that night, Sierra would sneak out of her mother's house and just run back to be with her dad. Needless to say, Daniel was not unhappy about that turn of events. The custody battle over Sierra continued to rage for the next several months, with Sierra opting to still remain at her father's place despite the court order, despite her mother pleading with her to come home. And then in April of 2021, something very odd happened. On the morning of April 8th, several $100s was withdrawn from Daniel's bank account from a few different ATMs around Las Vegas. This particular bank account was shared between Daniel and his second ex-wife, Bogdana. They just hadn't gotten around to relinquishing control to one or the other. And so these particular withdrawals were kind of uncharacteristic for Daniel or for Bogdana, and so they were flagged as potentially fraudulent.
All good.
And so the bank sent notifications to both Daniel and Bogdana saying as much. And so Bogdana, she gets the messages that there's been these potentially fraudulent charges. She knows it wasn't her.
Oh, yeah.
And so she calls Daniel, but Daniel doesn't pick up. And so she texts Daniel But again, silence
Although I'm
from
still
Daniel.
not sure,
Thinking
like,
this was a little bit odd, Bogdana
when we
reached
will
out
be
to
free.
Daniel's mother, Christine, knowing
Because
that
I
Daniel
know
and
we'll
his
be
mom
gone
spoke
for like next
nearly
week.
every day. And so she
Like,
filled the mother in about what was going on. And after
around
getting all the
22
information
or
from Bogdana, Christine would try calling and
23?
texting Daniel, but still got nothing.
In
and
January?
So she reached
Okay.
out to her granddaughter, Sierra. And so she calls Sierra. Sierra doesn't pick up. She texts Sierra asking to speak to Daniel. And Sierra doesn't get back right away, but eventually she responds to Christine.
Yeah, I'll probably be
and the response
free in
just
January.
said, his phone has been acting up, but he's okay.
Because I'm coming
it
back
should
in
be fixed
January.
by tomorrow night.
I
No
see, I
worries.
see.
Now, Christine was relieved to read that her son and her granddaughter were just fine, but at the same time, there was just something odd about the fact that she could not get in touch with her son, and that Sierra was kind of acting a little bit cagey, not answering her phone, which was unlike her, and then sending a message that didn't quite sound like her. But either way, Christine just let it go and figured she would be in touch with her son over the next 24 hours. But the next day, by 10 a.m., when Christine and Bogdana had not heard or seen Daniel, Christine again reached out to her granddaughter, Sierra. She called her, but she didn't pick up. And so she texted Sierra, this time demanding that she put her father on the phone. But Sierra did not put her father on
and
the
I'm
phone.
screaming,
Instead,
hell yeah,
after
let's
a few
go.
minutes, Christine just got another text message that said
You'll
something
definitely
to the
love
effect of,
like the
my dad's in
features
the
that it
shower,
has.
so he can't talk right now. Christine,
Like,
at this
especially
point, it was like her
the
radar
3D
was up,
feature,
and
it
she
really
knew there
helps
was
me
a
a lot
real
for,
problem. She didn't know what it
like,
was, but there was a problem, and
references, like,
someone
3D
needed to go over to Daniel's
very
house
3D-ish
and make sure
things
he
that I
and
can't,
Sierra
like,
were okay.
achieve.
And so Christine contacted a woman named Peggy Newman, who was Daniel's landlord and a close friend of Daniel, and she asked Peggy, would you mind going and doing a welfare check at Daniel's house? And Peggy would say, of course, no problem, but I won't be able to get over there for at least several hours. So Christine said, no problem. But as soon as she hung up, Christine just was so anxious, waiting to find out what was going on with her son, that at 1:46 p.m., when still Peggy was out running errands and had not done the welfare check yet, Christine just called the police and asked them to do a welfare check.
Yeah, hi, I need a welfare check. I don't know if
on who are we doing a welfare check?
for my son. He's been missing for 2 days. His work's called, his family's called, I've called, his ex-wife's called, and there's
Are you in
nobody
Kuya?
answering the phone and nobody...
Like, we're good. I recently,
nothing.
like, opened
Nobody
commissions.
can get a hold of him,
Well,
and then his work calls,
it's closed
and
now.
they can't get a hold of him, and it's really,
But
he just doesn't
everything's
act like
all
this.
good except
But
for one
as it
thing.
would happen, just a few minutes
I haven't
after
told you
Christine
that
placed that
Malin
911
got
call,
injured.
Peggy Newman and a friend of hers actually arrived at Daniel's residence ahead
a
of
few
the
hours
police.
after I
And so when
opened
they got there,
commissions,
they hopped out
like,
of their
2
car,
days
they
ago,
walked up to the front door,
she,
and as they're knocking on the front door, they
like,
look over into the driveway
fell
and they
somewhere,
see Daniel's
like,
car,
fell
which was a blue Nissan
somewhere in
Altima,
our house.
is not there. And so they're
And
knocking, they're
we
seeing the
don't
car's
know
not
where
there, it's
or
totally
how
silent in
she
the house. And so Peggy,
injured
she reaches
herself.
down and she tries the doorknob, and she
And I was
finds
like
it's
sleeping.
unlocked.
I was like
So she twists the knob, she opens the
sleeping
door,
around
and
like
she
4
and her
a.m.
friend
and
step
Siga
inside.
had to like
Just
wake me up
minutes later,
because
Peggy
he
and her friend
thought,
would come running out of the house,
he thinks
and
like,
Peggy would
okay,
call 911 because the
Maling
police weren't
looks
there
injured.
yet, and she
So
would frantically
we went
try to
downstairs
describe
to
to the
check,
dispatcher
and
what she had just seen.
yeah, there she was. She
24
was like
hours
hiding under the
earlier,
table.
and the
She
woman
was
were spotted on surveillance camera withdrawing
limping.
cash from
So
several Las Vegas
something was
ATMs
definitely not
using
right.
Daniel's debit card. Those were the withdrawals that
So yeah,
had been
she
flagged as
fractured
fraudulent
her
and tipped Bogdana
front
off
left
that
leg.
something could be wrong here. After those
And
withdrawals, the
she's
man and the woman were
on
spotted
a cast
again
right now.
on camera
We took her to
going
the
into
vet
a Las
yesterday
Vegas
for
supermarket
X-ray,
called Winco, and
and
inside they
they
would purchase
give
a few
her a
items
cast.
using Daniel's
It's
debit
only
card,
temporary,
and then they would leave
but
and they would
the
head
vet
to a Las
told
Vegas
us
depot
that
where once again
we
they'd be
need
caught
to
on
take her to
camera
another
purchasing
vet
a few
that
items using Daniel's
specializes
debit
in
card.
doing
After these
surgery
purchases,
for
the man and the woman
like
would make their way
bone
to
fractures,
Daniel's residence where
because
they would
she,
spend the night. The
like the
following
2
morning,
bones
Daniel's blue
in her
Nissan Altima
left
car was spotted
leg
leaving Las Vegas
are both
at around
shattered.
10:20 in the morning. That was
And
about
I
3.5
don't know
hours
how
before Peggy Newman and
how
her
she
friend
caught
went into
that.
Daniel's
Like, she's a
residence and then
cat.
quickly turned around and ran out and called 911. When police finally did arrive at Daniel's residence on April 9th, and they pulled up and they saw Peggy Newman and her friend totally ashen-faced and pacing on the sidewalk, the police would get out, they would talk to those two, they would go inside of Daniel's residence, and they would see the horrible thing that Peggy and her friend had also seen. But the police could not make sense of what they were seeing. It really just did not add up. Then, 4 days later, on April 13th, police in Salt Lake City, Utah, just happened to find the man and the woman that were seen on camera on April 8th using Daniel's debit card and going to the Winco and the Home Depot. The police, they just happened to find these people on a bus in Salt Lake City. And after going through the man and the woman's belongings, including their phones, the police would discover a video that these two had taken of themselves in the last couple of days.
We were wondering too
what was inside of Daniel's
But all we know
house.
was Siga told me that he heard a loud thud while he was like working, because he was like working in our office, so he didn't see what happened. He just heard a loud thud, and then suddenly
the young man
Maling
and the young
started
woman
like
you just saw joking
crying,
on camera
like
about
really
murdering
loud.
someone were
it's kind of like the
18-year-old Aaron
same
Guerrero
noise
and his
she would
girlfriend,
make when she's
16-year-old
like in heat,
Sierra Halseth,
like sounds like a
Daniel's
dying
youngest
cat.
daughter. Allegedly, on
But
the
we didn't
morning of
realize
April
that
8th, after
she
Aaron
was
and
like
Sierra
injured.
had pulled all that money
We
out
just
of all
thought
those
that
different ATMs,
she was like in
they had
heat.
gone to the Winco and purchased
So
disposable gloves
my
and bleach and drop
Siga
cloths,
had to check,
and they had gone to the Home Depot
and yeah,
purchased a
he
circular
actually
saw
got
and
scratched
saw blades
because
and lighter fluid.
he was
And
like trying to
then they headed
comfort
for Daniel's
Maling,
house.
but
It's not been
he
made public what
didn't
actually
know
occurred
that she
inside
got
of Daniel's
injured,
residence,
so
but we can
out
make
of
a few
like
assumptions. Daniel
Maling's
adored
reaction,
his
like
children.
to
There was
pain,
no act there. He truly loved his
she
children.
scratched
And
like
so it
Siga's
would
arm,
never cross his mind
not arm, like
that one of
hand,
his children or one of their significant
and like
others would
Siga
ever
was
want
like,
to hurt him. And
he
so
woke me
when
up and he
Sierra
was like,
and
his
Aaron
hand was like
went
bleeding.
inside of Daniel's house, it would have been extremely easy to sneak up on Daniel or just kind of catch him off guard because he's not looking to put up a fight. He thinks he's around people that love him and respect him because he loves and respects them. But however the young couple did it, they would inflict up to 70 stab wounds in Daniel's body, most of which were in the back of his head. And then at some point during this vicious attack, they stuffed Daniel into a sleeping bag, and right in the middle of the living room of his house, they doused him in lighter fluid and lit him on fire. It's unclear what exactly killed Daniel or for how long he was actually conscious and aware of what was happening before he died, but it's very possible that Daniel had at least a small moment in time where he recognized his beloved little angel, Sierra, was actively trying to kill him.
Okay,
After
how squeeze
Daniel
is
was
he?
either
I mean, he's
dead
fine.
or
He's fine.
incapacitated,
He just
the
got
young couple
scratched, but
tossed their pocket
like
knives
the
into
bleeding
the
is
sink,
really
and then they retrieved
not
their
that
circular
bad.
saw as well as a chainsaw,
Like it was bleeding,
and began
but
attempting to
I don't know.
dismember
It
Daniel's
stopped.
body, but they were unable to do
And just
it.
that he
and so they
didn't
just
get
kind of
like
set the saws
an
down in the
infection,
middle of
because
Daniel's
that was
home
like
with
also
bits of
something I was
Daniel
worried about.
stuck on the grooves of the saw. At that
Because
point,
at first I
Aaron and
thought he
Sierra
got
attempted to destroy evidence
but good thing it
inside
was
of the
just a
house
scratch.
by scrubbing everything down with bleach, but it was totally ineffective.
But yeah,
And so
Maling's
at that
such
point,
like
the
a
couple decided they
like
would
a
just
dumbass.
burn the
Oh my
entire
God.
house down, and that would destroy all the evidence.
Like,
and so around the time
not
that
gonna lie, like
Christine
the
texted
first
Sierra
hour when
and
we found out
demanded
she
to
was
speak
injured,
to
we were
Daniel, and Sierra
about
wrote
to
back, "Oh, he's
cry.
in the shower. He can't talk to you right
We're
now."
like about to
That
cry
was
because
probably around the time
it happened
that
at 4
Sierra and
a.m.
Aaron were
and
actively trying to burn the house
there's
down.
no vet
But the fire they
that's
set
like
was
open
just
around
not very
that
big,
time.
and it kind of smoldered out. And so they
So
would
we're
just
like,
kind of
oh
leave
shit, what are
all
we
of
gonna
the
do? Like
evidence
we
all over
can't
Daniel's
touch
house, and they would leave
like
Daniel's
Maling.
destroyed and burned
Like
body
we
kind of
need to
propped
leave
up
her
against the
be,
door leading into the
so
garage, and they would just
you know
leave
her
the house,
injury
hop in Daniel's
doesn't
blue
get worse.
Nissan Altima, and at around 10:20 in the morning, they would leave Las Vegas. The only reason police were able to apprehend Aaron and Sierra in Salt Lake City a few days later was because the couple had made their way to Salt Lake City and hopped on a bus, and Aaron had not paid the fare. He had just snuck onto the bus. And so at some point, the transit authority had come through the bus, and they were asking
Yeah, she's
people
a
to show their
gremlin.
tickets, and Aaron didn't have one.
I guess that's
And
like
so when they discovered this,
what
they
do you call
asked for
this?
his name, and when they entered his name into their system, it popped up that the Las Vegas PD
Because
were actively
Maling's
searching for him.
she's the
While
only one that's
Sierra knows
not
why she
spayed.
turned on the one man
or-
who would forever love
What's
her
the difference
and
of
would forever
spay
support her.
and neuter?
What we do know is
But
around
yeah,
the time that Daniel and
she
Elizabeth had gone back to court,
hasn't
and
done
they were
any
having
like
those virtual
spay or
meetings with the
neutering,
judge to decide who
so
was going to
she
have custody over Sierra.
gets in heat
Sierra had begun dating
sometimes.
Aaron, and she had fallen totally
Like
in
not
love
as
with him,
often as
and it
before,
seemed very much
but
like
she
Aaron
is
had
still
totally fallen in love with her.
gets in
And
heat.
somehow Daniel caught wind of the fact that Aaron and Sierra were planning to run away secretly and go move to Los Angeles. And so when Daniel heard this, he told his
So
ex-wife
I wonder
Elizabeth,
how
and
she
then
would
they
act
would go and talk to
once
Aaron's
she
parents,
gets,
and they
like,
would tell them about this plan to
a
run away.
spade.
And both sets of parents talked and decided it was in both child's best interest if they stopped seeing each other. And so, starting in early 2021, the parents forbade their child from seeing each other, and that was it. But even though all the parents were involved in this decision, because Sierra was at the time living with Daniel, it seemed like she focused her rage about this decision on Daniel, because he was the one kind of enforcing the rule. And so it's believed in April of that year, Sierra decided she would just have to kill her father in order to get her boyfriend back. In Daniel's obituary, his family very conspicuously left Sierra out, saying that Daniel was survived by 2 loving children, not 3. His family has also come out and publicly stated that they hope Sierra and her boyfriend are given the harshest penalty allowable by law. Despite the existence of this confession video that Aaron and Sierra took of themselves talking about murdering Daniel, they have pled not guilty and are currently awaiting trial. So that's going to do it. If you got something out of this episode and you haven't done this already, please move in to the room directly above the like buttons apartment and immediately begin hosting tap dancing classes in your apartment. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly 1 or 2 video uploads. We now have a podcast just called Mr. Ballin Podcast, where we upload never before heard stories that are total podcast exclusives on Monday mornings. And on Thursday mornings, we re-upload YouTube audio that has been remastered. Again, it's called the Mr. Ballin Podcast, and it's available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, basically anywhere you can find podcasts, you can find it there. If you want to get in touch with me, please follow me on any major social media platform. My username on all of them is just at Mr. Ballin, and I really do read the majority of my DMs. We have 2 additional YouTube channels. One is called Mr. Ballin Shorts, where we post random short videos and lost episodes, and the other channel is called Mr. Ballin en Espanol, and it's a Spanish language channel. We also have a Facebook page just called Mr. Ballin that posts near daily content, and we have a Snapchat channel that puts out content on Sundays. We also have some really cool merch, so head on over to shopmrballin.com to have a look.
What do you think of Coffee
if you have a story suggestion, please submit it to our subreddit just called Mr. Ballin. It's linked in the description below. So whether I see you on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Reddit, YouTube, Facebook, other YouTube channels, the podcast, wherever, just know that I really appreciate your support. And until next time, that's going to do it. See ya.
It's sweet. I like it. Because for me, like, I like coffee that don't have like a sour aftertaste. I don't know, it's like something I've noticed in some coffee. Like, yeah, it's like there's like some super, well, very sweet coffee.
January 1744.
And you have like a nasty sour aftertaste that I do not like.
Carrying a 14-year-old German princess
I'm alright with
to St.
just not drinking coffee in general.
Christened Sophie Friederike
Usually put
Augusta.
milk cream with the sour taste.
In Russia,
but yeah,
she
ever
would
since
take a
like
new name,
I
Catherine.
got back into drinking coffee, we mainly use
She was to marry the heir
soy
to the
milk
Russian throne.
for
And must have imagined
the
her
coffee.
future in this frozen land. Dreamt
And
of
it's
a
actually
loving
so
husband.
good. Like I really
But her
dig
hopes were in vain.
this the soy milk
marriage would
taste
be
in
loveless.
coffee. It
This young
I don't know,
princess
it's like a
would
really
instead fall
good
in love with Russia.
I don't know, it's a good mix. But sometimes, like, just this one time I tried it out.
18
I
years
tried out
later, year
adding
1762.
peanut butter on coffee.
At the
like,
Russian court,
just
the age of elaborate wigs
black
and
coffee,
lavish balls
a bit
was
of
coming to an
sugar,
end.
and like a
They held no interest
spoon
for Empress
of
Elizabeth's
peanut
successor,
butter. It's
34-year-old
really good.
Peter Fyodorovich. Not even those close to the new emperor knew quite what to expect from him. He fidgeted constantly through ceremonies, liked to play with toy soldiers, and often said out loud that he'd rather rule a civilized country like Sweden
Never tried soy
than a
milk.
wild one like Russia.
Like, never
Chapter 1.
drank soy
Peter
milk
III
or
Fyodorovich.
never tried soy milk on coffee.
Peter was born Karl Peter Ulrich,
Peanut
son
butter.
of the German Duke of Holstein.
Yeah, I know it might
Nephew
sound
of
weird,
King Karl XII
but
of Sweden.
trust me, it will
His mother was Anna
make sense
Petrovna,
once
daughter
you
of
try
Peter
it.
the Great, making him heir to both the Russian and Swedish thrones.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good.
Peter, orphaned at the age of 11, was brought to Russia by his aunt, Empress Elizabeth. She had him convert to Russian Orthodoxy and renounce his claim to the Swedish throne.
Am I watching?
At the age of 17,
What's
he
this?
married the 16-year-old German Princess of Anhalt-Zerbst, who
This not
converted...
Mr. Ballin? The fuck?
In Today, we're going to look at 3 places you can't go and people who went there anyways. But before we get into today's stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do and we upload once or twice a week. So if that's of interest to you, please log on to the Like Button's Netflix account and fast forward all of their continue watching shows approximately 2 or 3 minutes. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. All right, let's get into today's stories.
I'm gonna switch to my laptop. Okay. Okay, this looks good.
Located on the far northern tip of Maine, right on the border of Canada, lies a small rural town called Van Buren. Van Buren is home to about 2,000 people who, for the most part, have lived in Maine for their entire lives, and they tend to be very rugged and very competent people. But unless you live in
oh my
Van
God, is that a
Buren
chocolate
or know
bear
someone in
plushie
Van
card?
Buren or have family out there, there's no reason you
I
would have heard
wish
of
I
this
had
particular
something like
town.
that.
Nothing really happens in
I
this town,
mean,
at least
you
nothing
know,
that
you can
makes
hit me up.
headlines. However, that would change. In 2019, Van
I'm
Buren
down
made
to do that for
international
you.
headlines because of one man, Ronald Sear. As a young man in the 1950s, Ronald Sear
Also, what's up,
joined the
Teddy?
Air Force and fought in the
Good
Korean
morning.
War. And then after he got out of the military,
Hope
he
you're doing
moved back
good.
to his hometown of Van Buren, Maine, and he moved into a very modest 2-story home right near town.
But yeah, you know, if
And
you
for a little
want
while,
something
he just
like
kind of
this,
floated about, didn't really have
feel
a
free to hit
direction
me
in
up.
life, but
I'm
eventually,
always
because of his
down
love for working with his
to
hands
slide into my
and his
DMs.
general skill at working with his hands and building things, he started a small but successful tool selling company that he ran right out of his shed on
Sliding
his
into
property.
those
Fast
DMs,
forward
baby
to
girl.
2019,
Wait, where's my
Ronald
lip
Sear at
bite?
that time was 65 years old, and
Fuck,
he
where's
still
my lip
lived in the
bite?
same property right near town.
Oh my
in
God,
Van
I still have,
Buren.
like,
However, he now
my
lived alone,
old, like,
and he
model
still
stick
ran this
shortcuts
tool
on
selling
my
business
stream
right
deck.
out of his work shed. And for Ronald,
Yeah.
this was enough. He was very content with his life. He was very happy. But that year, he would face a crisis. One bright, sunny morning in the summer of that year, Ronald left his house and he walked over to his shed. He went inside, and
Okay,
right
yeah,
away he
sleep,
noticed
son.
something.
Let's
Ronald
go.
kept all these bins inside of his shed that were full of all of the different tools that he would sell. And because he was in there all the time, either literally selling tools or
my setup,
tinkering
my
with whatever it
workspace.
was he was building himself, he was very
fuck
aware
up.
of how
There we go,
full
it's back.
each of these bins were. And anytime they got low, he would order more so he had enough supply to sell. And so he went
was,
into
like,
his shed
really
this morning
worried
and he noticed
for a
right away
second
that a couple of the
that I
bins appeared to
may
be
have
a little
fucked it
bit
up.
lower than he remembered. And right away, Ronald is thinking, you know, did I forget to order supplies to fill these bins up? Did I just forget to do that? But he's thinking to himself, you know,
Did you
I am
hear about the
meticulous
cheese factory
in
that
making
exploded
sure
in
my
France? There was
inventory is
nothing
full at
left
all
but
times. I've been
debris.
doing this for decades, and so it can't be me. You know, maybe
Oh my
I
God.
took the tools and I brought them into my house
I-
and I've left them in
I
there, or
hate
maybe
that.
they're in my truck.
Ow.
And so Ronald, believing there's a totally logical explanation for this, would leave his shed and he
Just
would search his property, but he
get
can't
some
find these
wipes.
tools
Oh my God.
anywhere. And so he began calling his
just
family
forgot
and his
that
friends to see if, you know,
there's
maybe
something in
they
my
had come
hands,
by and borrowed some
and
of
I
these
rubbed
tools,
my
or
eyes,
maybe
and
they
it
knew what had
stings.
happened to them, but everyone he spoke to said, no, I have no idea. And so by that afternoon, Ronald had found himself back inside of his work shed looking around, thinking to himself, have I been robbed? It was the only logical thing he could think of that would explain this loss. And so Ronald drove to the police station and he spoke to police and he explained what happened. But unfortunately, the police's reaction to what he was telling them was not exactly what he wanted. They basically assumed that he just had miscounted, that in reality the tools were either still in the shed, that he just forgot how many were supposed to be in there, or he had just kind of lost them on his property somewhere, that they were bound to turn up. And so the police told him, look, Ronald, go back and search your property. I'm sure they're there. And if you get some proof that someone actually stole from you, then come back to us. And so Ronald was really annoyed by this. He wanted them to take this seriously, but he could tell they just were not going to. And so Ronald drove back to his house. He went inside, he hopped on his computer, and he began researching what other homeowners did to protect themselves from things like theft. And one of the things he came across was setting up tripwires all around the perimeter of your property. Basically, you take these thin wires and you stretch them out very tight, very low to the ground, and you anchor them on each side, and then on the wire itself you hang little bells. And so in theory, if an intruder were to walk onto your property, they would most likely not see the tripwires on the ground, and they would kick them, and that would cause the bells to ring, thereby alerting the homeowner of their presence. Ronald loved this idea, so he went out and he set up tripwires all around his property. But over the next several days, after these wires were stood up, none of the wires made any sound, and still more tools continued to go missing. This was also in spite of the fact that pronouncing it wrong all this time. Thank you. Ronald's thinking to himself, whoever's doing this is clearly watching me and kind of monitoring what I'm doing. They must be aware of the tripwires, and they must be sneaking into the shed, at some time that I have the doors unlocked. I mean, this is a professional thief. And so as Ronald is thinking about this master thief
I really appreciate it. Like, it's something I really struggle with. So it's really nice to know. But yeah, hopefully you get some rest. And I really appreciate you hanging out with me.
Breaking into his home and stealing things from in there, which included all of his cash and many other valuables. And so Ronald became very fearful and decided the only thing he could do was really beef up his home security system. And so he hopped back online and he began Googling other ways to protect your property. And after discovering a number of really effective techniques, he got to work. He began building all these home defense systems and placing them all around his property. And after all of these kind of DIY security measures were put up, the theft of his tools stopped. And in Ronald's mind, that validated that his defense system
nice
had
rig.
worked.
I just
He
saw
was
it on
effectively
FB.
preventing
Hey,
theft,
nice.
but this
Welcome,
would not
welcome.
be
Good
the end of his
morning.
troubles. Fast forward to Thanksgiving
And I
that year,
really
so November
appreciate
28th,
that you guys
and the
like
Van
my
Buren police
rig.
got a very frantic phone call from Ronald. He was totally hysterical. He wasn't really making sense. And the police, they tried to understand what was going on,
a lot of
but all they
effort
could get
on
from Ronald was that he was
my
requesting police to come to his
including
residence
like VTuber
immediately.
models
And
that
so the police, they hang up and they're thinking, okay, we know Ronald
as
was
well.
dealing with a potential thief. Maybe he literally caught the thief red-handed and he wants us to come and arrest
Giving
this
them,
person, and who knows, maybe they're fighting at his residence right now. And so the police speed over to Ronald's house, they pull into his driveway, and at first glance, nothing looks out of the ordinary. Ronald's truck is in the driveway, and there's no obvious signs of a disturbance, but they notice the front door to Ronald's house is wide open. And so the police park their cars in Ronald's driveway, they get out and they run up onto the front porch, and they're standing in front of this open door, and they look down and they can see there's a very obvious blood trail starting from the front of Ronald's house, going straight back down a hallway that looped around to the left and out of sight.
That's like
and so right
really
away the police are yelling into the house, Ronald, are you okay? What's going on? And somewhere deep inside of the house, they hear what sounds like Ronald make a kind of guttural sound. And so immediately this tips the police that more than likely Ronald has been hurt, and he likely is the one who made this blood trail. And so the police draw their guns and they go inside of Ronald's house, not really sure what they're going to find. They don't know if there's some intruder or attacker or someone in here that's harmed Ronald, but they make their way down this hall following the blood trail. They turn the corner, and then sitting at the end of the blood trail is Ronald. He's sitting down with his back to some cabinets in the kitchen, and he's clutching his midsection. He is covered in blood. He's completely pale. And so right away, the officers call in backup, but then as a security measure, they search the rest of the first floor to make sure there is no other person here. There was no one on the first floor. They went to the second floor. They peeked around up there. They didn't see anyone. So they rushed back down to Ronald, who's still just
Make
sitting
sure
there,
the
and they begin
shading
administering first aid.
doesn't
And
have
they're trying to
any,
get
like,
him to explain what happened, how did you get hurt? But Ronald is clearly in shock.
unfilled
He's kind of in a
parts.
daze. He's not making sense. And then by the time the paramedics showed up, just a couple of minutes later, Ronald had
go.
slipped into unconsciousness. When Ronald
back
was wheeled out of the
in
house, the responding officers and the backup officers, who by now had arrived, decided to search the rest of Ronald's house to see if there was some clue
That a
as to what
commission?
had happened. And so they
No,
began searching in the
I'm just
kitchen, looking
working
around,
on,
but there
like,
wasn't anything that stood
some
out to them. And then they
experimental
began walking around
toggles
towards the
for
living room. And when they got into the
something.
living room, one of the officers suddenly screamed to everyone inside to stop where they were, stop moving. It would turn out Ronald, as part of his very beefed up home security
But I do
system,
know that
had installed
some people are
various
taking
booby
interest
traps
in
all around his
wanting
property,
something like
including
this, like a
inside of his
plushie,
house. And some of
like
these
holding a
traps
plushie.
were gun
And not gonna lie,
booby
I
traps.
want something
The
for
officer
myself.
that had yelled for everyone to stop had spotted one of these traps. He saw a handgun anchored to the
that was
ceiling,
the-
aimed at the front door, and there was a string
keep that
attached to the
up,
trigger that was also then attached to the doorknob of the front door. And so if this trap
Too bad I've
were
already,
live
like,
and some
drank
person
tea.
opened the front
I'm more
door,
of a tea
it would
person
activate
than
this trap,
coffee
causing
person,
the gun to
but
shoot them. And so clearly Ronald had
there's, like,
accidentally left
we have
this
more
particular booby trap
coffee.
on, and he had
Oh, I guess
accidentally
we have more
activated it,
tea right now.
shooting himself. And so after the officer sees this gun anchored to the ceiling, he tells everyone, and they begin looking up and just
What
looking
is
around to
this?
see if there are other traps. And amazingly, there are.
Okay,
In
let me
other doorways, just from where they're standing, they can see the barrels of guns pointing down that are obvious booby traps. In their haste to get in there and figure out what was going on, they hadn't noticed all of these guns in the ceiling, and so it was just kind of a miracle that none of the other traps had been set off. Ronald would be rushed to the hospital that night, but he would pass away
Put
from his
this in the
wound.
middle.
His death would be ruled an accident, and to this day, we don't know if he really was dealing with a professional thief that was stealing his tools, or if it was just a figment of his imagination. Mary Cerruti had a difficult childhood. Growing up in the 1950s and early 1960s in Houston,
Okay,
Texas,
this
Mary's family barely had
just
enough
needs a
money
little
to
bit
get
of,
by. And then by the time Mary was 21,
adjustment.
both of her parents had passed away, leaving her with nothing.
Okay.
After their deaths, Mary kind of bounced around Houston, going from one low-paying job to the next, and then eventually she met a man that she fell madly in love with, and they got married, but unfortunately that marriage would end in divorce. After Mary got over that heartbreak, she would meet another man who she would also fall in love with, and they would get married too, but
There we
like her
go.
first marriage, this one also ended in divorce. At this point, Mary was so devastated by yet another heartbreak that she just kind of accepted that
There
she
are
was
some
not going to get
parts
married again.
that's
She was not going to have a family
not
of her own.
blended.
But she didn't let this get her down. Instead, she kind of
What is this?
embraced her life
Okay,
as
I
a
need to
loner.
blend this.
Fast forward to
That
2015, and Mary was 61
not
years old,
good.
and she was still living alone. She lived in a small home in a Houston neighborhood. This neighborhood, over the last several decades, had really begun to grow. Lots of new apartment
What is
complexes
that
were being built
contour?
all the time, and in fact,
Shading?
one of the apartment
What's a
developers had
multiply?
approached Mary and offered to buy her house so they could build over her land, but she
Okay,
had
I just need to
refused
blend that
because
in.
she loved her house. She did not want to sell it. Didn't matter
There
what
we
they
go.
offered her. And so she was
All
the only
fixed.
house in this long stretch of apartment buildings that didn't sell. But Mary kind of liked it. She wrote in her diary that her bungalow was like a castle, and all these apartment buildings all around her were her castle walls. Mary didn't really have much contact with other people. She didn't have a consistent job, so she didn't have relationships with coworkers. She didn't have much contact, if any, with her living family, and she really didn't have any friends, with the exception of one woman who was in town who owned an arts and crafts shop, who Mary would periodically go into town and say hello to. But despite all that, Mary was not lonely. She had lots and lots of cats, and she loved cats. Anytime she saw a stray cat out in the neighborhood, Mary would get the cat food and water, and then eventually would try to coax the cat to come into her house, and then when it did, she would win the cat's trust, and then she would give it a place to live, and she would feed it and take care of it. And so before long, she had dozens of cats living in the house with her. And so these cats kind of became Mary's best friends, and so she rarely left the house, if ever. She
Cross
mostly just
arms.
stayed in the house with them. In February of that year, one of Mary's
that
neighbors happened to be walking by her property, and they looked over and they saw a stack of mail had grown on her front porch, indicating that Mary had not opened her door to get her mail. And this neighbor also noticed that while Mary's property did tend to get a little bit overgrown with the trees and the grass, it was exceptionally overgrown, like no one was even trying to take care of it. And so this neighbor was concerned that maybe something had happened to Mary, and so they opened up a fence, they walked across the yard,
I see we
they
came
went up
back
onto
to
the
teaching
porch,
hours.
and they knocked on the front door.
Yeah, in a
but
way.
it was silent. And so this neighbor
But yeah,
kind of
what's up?
leaned over and looked in the window that
Are you
was
also
just to the
teaching
left
hours?
of the door to see if maybe they could
What's
look
going on here?
inside, but there was a curtain drawn across that window, so they couldn't see anything. And so the neighbor tried knocking on the door one more time, but again, met with silence. And so after standing there for a minute, the neighbor left the front porch and walked around to the side of the house to see if maybe they could look in one of those windows. But when they went around to the side, those windows were covered with curtains too. So the neighbor walked back to the front of the property and just stood there looking at the house, wondering
I just
what
came
they
back
should
from
do.
work.
And something told them that
Oh,
something's
nice.
off,
Okay.
something's wrong. Someone needs to
Getting
make sure
foodies.
Mary
How you
really
been?
is okay. Someone needs
I
to
mean,
get
right now
inside of this
I'm
house.
doing all
And so
right.
the neighbor
Although
called
there's
the
like
Houston
one
police and
thing
explained the situation.
that's like
a few minutes later,
very
the Houston
concerning,
police
which is
arrived and they
our
too
cat.
went right up onto Mary's porch. They knocked on
like,
her door.
a few
It was
hours
met with
after I opened
silence.
commissions,
And so after
my
that, the police talked to one of the other
our cat
neighbors
Maling,
and got a key that Mary had apparently given them
fractured
previously.
her
And the police went back to
front
Mary's front door. They
left
used
leg.
the key. They unlocked
And
the door. They
we
opened
need
it
to
up,
take
and
her
right
to
away,
the
they were
vet,
hit with this horrible
later,
smell coming from inside the house.
so she
The
can get
police
like
pushed the door
surgery.
the rest of the way open,
Hopefully.
and they stepped inside and they yelled out for Mary.
Like
but
yesterday
it was
too,
silent. And then
we
before
went
the police even
to
began walking around
another
looking for
vet,
her, they looked
from
off
a
to their
different,
left and
from
the
the
right
like
inside
the
of the
city,
house, and they saw there
city,
were all these dead
or
cats all over the ground.
out of town.
And so the Houston police didn't know what
And
happened to Mary,
we
but right
got
away
her
they're thinking,
X-ray,
okay, you know, we've
and
seen
they
scenarios
put her
like
in
this
a cast,
before,
like,
where someone who
her
lives alone
front
that no one really
leg
checks on dies
was in a cast.
unexpectedly, and then
That's
when
bad,
they
sorry.
pass away, all of their pets
Yeah,
are trapped in
I
the
don't know how
house,
she
they're not
did
getting
that.
fed,
Like,
and so
she-
they pass away too. And so the police
There was
at
a
this
loud
point
thud. I
are
was, like,
fully expecting
sleeping,
to find Mary's dead
and
body
she just
somewhere in the house.
did
And so
something.
they begin walking through the house looking for it.
And
But after searching the house top to
it
bottom,
makes
they
me
could
anxious
not
because
find
we
Mary.
really
And
don't
so
know,
the police
like,
leave
the
Mary's
cause.
house, and at this point there are
So,
people outside gathered because they see the police cars.
I don't know,
And so the police
we
grabbed a couple of the neighbors and
need
they
to
asked them, you know, do you know
cat-proof
anything
the
about this woman?
house
You know,
more.
did she say anything about where
Because
she was
our
going? Did you see her
staircase
leave at any
has like a
point?
really
And the
open,
consensus
like,
amongst the
rails,
neighbors they spoke to
I guess.
was that Mary basically kept to herself.
That
She did
or
not travel. She didn't go anywhere.
our cat
She
is just
mostly
really fat
stayed in her
and
house with
couldn't
her
like
cats.
support
And so it
herself.
was very unlikely that she would have just abandoned the property and
Actually, what's her
abandoned
weight?
cats because she loved
Okay,
them so much.
I actually
And
have
so the
the
police at this point are thinking, okay, she's got to be in this house somewhere.
description.
And so the police
She is
called a few more
3.4.
officers to the property, and the group
Okay,
went
she's not
back
that
inside
heavy.
of Mary's house, and they really looked for Mary, thinking that, you know, maybe she
But
slipped
yeah,
into a
cats being
closet and
cats.
that's where she passed away, or, you know,
Meanwhile,
maybe she's just
Xiaopao and
hidden
Xiaomai,
somewhere
they're
in the house. And so they
super
really kind
chill.
of ripped the house apart looking for
Oh
her.
yeah, I'm not
But
sure if
again, there
you
was just
heard,
nothing.
but
And so after
we
they
have like a
finally
third
stopped the search
cat.
without finding Mary, the police
Like, ever
contacted
since
Mary's
we
extended
moved in
family,
here,
and they asked them the same questions. You know, did Mary
we
say
found
anything about a
her,
trip she
like,
was gonna
outside
take? You know,
our
is there any
window,
reason she would just abandon her
like
property?
during the night.
And they all would
That
say,
was like
look, we don't talk to Mary.
around
we don't
like
know where
the
she
end
went.
of
We have
May.
no idea. And so for a little while,
And yeah,
the
we
Houston
just
police
adopted the cat.
continued to search for Mary in and around Houston.
I had a 5
But
kilogram one, and
eventually,
he
after
wasn't even
finding
that fat.
nothing, the search
Oh
kind of
yeah, yeah.
stopped,
Wait,
and
hold up.
they reached out to Mary's
I think I
family
still
and said, you know,
have
if you hear
the
anything else about what
picture
happened to Mary, please let us know.
on Twitter.
Several months later, Mary's
Oh wait,
house
wait.
went into foreclosure because
Did I
no
invite
one
you
was
to my
making
server?
payments anymore,
I
and the bank put her house
let
up
me
for
see.
auction. And a real estate entrepreneur in Houston bought the house up quickly.
Yeah,
and
I'll
after
invite you
cleaning
to
it
my
out,
server.
he
I
put it
know
on the
I
market
still
to be
have like
rented
the
out.
pictures
And for the next couple of
of
years,
Maling.
several tenants lived in Mary's old house. None of them
In the
staying for very
pets
long.
channel,
Then in
invite
March
the
of
server,
2017, when the
Salty
property was
Splatoon.
vacant, this
There you
young
go.
couple reached out to the landlord and said they were looking to rent, and they were hoping to potentially
Yeah,
stay
like
in
ever
this property
since
for 2 or 3 years.
you know,
The
like
landlord was
the
thrilled, and he
old
sent over a lease
server
for them to
got
sign. And then once the
nuked,
couple had signed the lease, and the
I
property
actually
was theirs,
made
the
my
husband
own
decided
server.
to just go over on his
So
own and
that
walk
way
around
I
the
am
property and
the
see
one
what they would
handling
need to buy
everything.
in terms of furnishings. And so the husband arrives at the property,
Yeah,
he
the
goes
thing,
in the front
yeah.
door, he walks around the first floor,
But yeah, I'm
and then
trying
at some
to
point
like
he decides he wants to go up
make
into
my
the
channel
attic
like
to see how much storage space they
alive-ish.
have. And so he gets underneath the trap door in the ceiling, he grabs the string and he
I think
pulls
it's
it down,
kind of hard to like like
feeling this folded up ladder.
manage
he
to
flips down
server if
the lower
you're
ladder piece and puts it on the ground.
like
and
an
then
introvert.
He began climbing up. Once he got up into the attic, he
and
stayed standing
I'm kind
on
of
the
like
ladder
shy
and
to
just
join
kind of
in
scanned
calls.
around And
So
he saw there really wasn't much up there. There was a couple
it's
of
something I
metal
need to like
cages
work
that appeared
on.
to have been for pets or something.
So
it was very dirty and
that way
dark,
I
and
want
it
to be
appeared
able
like
to
no one had really come up here
hang
in a
out
long
with
time. And he kind of assumed that, you know, the
like
other tenants
people in the
weren't using
server
this as a storage
as well.
space. And so the husband was about to go back down the ladder when he noticed off to the right side of the attic, kind of far away from the ladder, right where the roof begins to pitch down.
I feel you.
He saw one of the floorboards was kind of
I know
popped
it takes
up
a while
like it
for me to
shouldn't
get
be.
used
He
to.
stared at it and he's looking
But
around at the rest
once
of the
I
attic,
get
and all
there,
of the floorboards were perfectly
I am
uniform, but that
probably
one was
gonna
really
be
jacked up.
what?
And so he was curious, and so
Way
he
more
climbed up into the attic and he kind of stooped down
like
and he
talkative,
walked
I
over
guess.
to this loose floorboard.
I have no
and when
issue
he
going
was
on
standing
calls
over
1v1,
you
but
could
server
tell
with
that this
5
floorboard
plus.
had kind of popped
Yeah.
off of this hole
I'm
in the ground,
okay
that
if
the
it's like
floorboard had
people
been
I'm
covering this hole,
familiar
but the
with.
hole was dark.
But when
And
it
so he
comes to
pulled out
like
his phone and he turned on his
newcomers,
flashlight and he looked straight down and he aimed the light into
get
this
silent.
hole. Now, this hole was basically just a gap between two of the walls on the first floor. And so he's shining his light down into this gap and he sees at the bottom the remains of the woman the Houston police have been looking for the past 2 years. Mary Cerruti. While no one knows for sure exactly what happened to her, it's believed back in early 2015 when she went missing, she had gone up into the attic where perhaps her cats liked to sunbathe off to the side of the attic because there was a big window that looked into the attic. And so she went up there to maybe feed the cats or check on the cats that were up there. And when she walked over to that side of the attic where the window looked in, she stepped on that loose floorboard
including
and
the
it gave out from her weight and she kind of
and I'm really
fell
happy.
through it like a trap door and fell down into that gap between the walls. It's unlikely she was hurt from this fall, but when she stood back up again in this kind of narrow space, she would have realized very quickly that there was nowhere for her to go. You can't
when
go
you're
left,
making
you
rigging
can't go
tutorials
right,
so I
and you
can
can't get
learn
back
and
up
teach
into
my
the attic.
job.
It's too far up for her to reach.
I
and there was
wish
no
I
way
can
for
make
her to
proper
kind of use the
like
walls
rigging
to climb
tutorial,
back up because the space she was
but
in was
I
so
swear,
narrow.
like
I mean, she could barely move. She also didn't have a cell phone on her, so she couldn't call anyone. If she screamed out, no one would have heard her because she was behind several walls of insulation.
I think
and because
hopefully
no
in
one
the
ever
future
checked on her, there was no
I
one
think
that was
only
just gonna
one
find
thing
her
I can
trapped
make a
in the wall.
tutorial
She
out
was
of
totally on her
is
own. And so
the mouth
trapped in
rigging.
this little space,
So,
Mary spent probably a couple of days
when it comes to like
screaming and trying to get her
accurate
way
mouth
out,
rigging,
but nothing worked. And
like
then
vibrate
eventually
your
she
mouth.
passed away.
We call it a
And then
vibrate your mouth.
unfortunately, all of her cats did too.
That's
Her death was a
something
road
I
accident.
can do because yeah, this one like very accurate
In the
mouth
spring of
cracking.
2017, Antonio Navarrete was on top of the world. Just a year earlier,
Yeah,
the 21-year-old
that's something
Florida
I'm really
resident
considering,
had met the love of his life,
making a
young
tutorial
woman
out
named
of.
Daisy Martinez. And now Daisy was pregnant, and so she and Antonio were very excited about starting a family together. For the time being,
And I'm also
Antonio and
planning
Daisy were
to
living with Antonio's
probably
parents in his
release,
hometown of
like
Waimama,
sample files
which is a quiet
that
rural
people
suburb
can
just
buy,
south of Tampa. But
you know, like
Antonio had
passive
a bright
income.
future ahead of him. Ever since he had graduated
I'm
high
not a
school,
VTuber,
he
and my
knew what he wanted
Twitter
to do
is
with
filled
his
with
life.
VTuber
He wanted to
shit.
be an auto mechanic, and he had the skills to do it.
I don't
From the time
understand
he
where
was a
my parents
toddler,
went wrong.
He had always been obsessed with cars, breaking apart his toy cars and putting them back together. And then as he got a little bit older, he began drawing these very intricate drawings.
At
of
least
cars
it's
that
not
he loved
free.
or designs for
I
new
mean-
cars. And then when he was a teenager, he began actually tinkering around with real
No hate.
cars until he finally
I mean, to each
acquired a
their
car of his own. It was a white Chevy lowrider pickup truck that he tripped
I'm okay
out
with
all these
freeze.
fancy lights and special rims
Although
and this
there are
huge sound
some
system that took up
aspects,
most of his back seat.
where it
was
gets
thanks
really
in part to
extreme.
this truck, which he nicknamed Casper, that Antonio, who was too shy to
But
be
I
much
guess
of a ladies'
it's
man,
the
met up with Daisy in the first
weird
place.
fetish
Antonio
part
had
that
driven Casper to a local car
I'm
meetup
really
for other
iffy
car
with.
enthusiasts, where you could basically park your vehicle and you could walk around and see what other
Okay, for
people
our
did to
toggle
upgrade
group,
or enhance their vehicles. And
I
so
can
while
make a
Antonio was there, he
bag
was
up for
walking
this.
around when he saw on the far side
how-
of this meetup
how
there
long
was this
have I been streaming?
unbelievably
2 hours.
beautiful
Okay,
young
I
woman,
think
and he found himself
that's, like,
just
enough
staring at
time.
her. He couldn't help it.
And
this
it's
young
gonna be
woman,
almost
who
7,
was Daisy,
so
she eventually would
around-
look up and she would smile
what
at
time?
him, and the rest, as they say, was history. 6 months
Okay.
later, not
7
long after
a.m.,
Daisy
I
had
need
moved
to
in with
give
Antonio at his
Maling
parents'
her
house,
meds.
and the couple had announced to their
So,
delighted families that
I'm
they
gonna
were
make a
going to have
backup.
a baby, Antonio got
Okay,
yet
saving this.
another good piece of news. He'd landed a good
I'm
job
gonna
with a company
do this
that did
real
maintenance
quick.
work for Tampa Electric Company's Big Bend power plant,
And
which was
I'm
located
gonna look
in
for
Apollo,
someone to
Florida, which is
raid.
about 10 miles to the east of
Let's
Antonio's
see.
parents' home. Now, this was not Antonio's dream job. He still very much wanted to eventually become an auto mechanic, but this job paid $12 an hour, nearly double what he was used to making.
Just need to like look
And so
for
with this
someone to raid.
job, he and Daisy would
Raid
finally
Shadow
be able to
Legends.
raise enough money to get a place of their own, hopefully before the baby arrived that fall. Also, Antonio had been told by other people who worked at this company that this was actually a really easy job.
Okay,
Pretty much
Teddy
you
is
just rolled around on golf carts all day picking up
live.
trash. It was perfect. A few weeks later, on June
I need to
24th,
raid
Antonio
my
found himself
daughter.
driving in his truck to the Big Bend power plant for his first day on the job. As he drove, he would have glanced over at the picture of Daisy he had taped to his dashboard.
Okay,
She was the
let's see.
only woman he
Oh,
had
there's
ever
still
met
ads.
besides his mother. When Antonio arrived
I get a
at the
30-second
Big Bend power plant, he was totally
Okay,
amazed
but anyway,
at just how enormous this thing was.
raid
It was
my
basically
daughter.
this huge factory that sat right up
Teddy
against the water,
Sunday.
and there were 4 huge smokestacks coming out
Here's
of
the
the ceiling of this
raid
factory
message.
with white smoke billowing out of them. This plant
And
produced electricity,
raid
and they did this
sub-message.
by burning coal. This process was done in
Ow.
4 distinct units that
What
were
the fuck?
inside of this factory that Antonio was looking at. And each of these
There we
units
go.
is comprised of a humongous boiler,
Okay.
which is basically a
Ow.
12-story tall oven. And so coal is loaded
But yeah,
into this huge
anyways, thank you
boiler.
Reconnecting. What the fuck? Okay, I'm gonna raid my child. Here we go.